An upper-class commodities director and a lowly street hustler unknowingly trade places as part of a scientific experiment orchestrated by the dastardly Duke and Duke. John Landis' 80s spin on The Prince and the Pauper was a seasonal smash in the early 80s. An outstanding cast and great writing combined to make Trading Places an evergreen festive classic. My name is Luke, and the two jive turkeys with me are Matt.
My Harvard tie. Like, oh sure, he went to Harvard.
And Westy.
Those men wanted to have sex with me.
All the right movies are thinking big, thinking positive. Fear, that's the other guy's problem. Hi everyone, Merry New Year and welcome to All the Right Movies, a podcast on classic and hit films whose stock is higher than pork bellies and frozen concentrated orange juice.
Pork bellies.
Pork bellies, I knew it.
I knew it.
We're back in the city of brotherly love this week and we're guaranteeing festive fun as we go behind the scenes on Trading Places.
Yeah.
Oh, a hot potato this one.
It is. Too hot to handle,
Very
I
much.
think.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Almost,
see how this
sometimes.
goes. Yeah, it definitely is. It's going to burn your mouth.
Burn my fingers, man. Now, before we start, we're just going to remind you about the benefits of becoming an ATRM patron.
Absolutely.
This is our flagship podcast, ATRM Classic, and you can listen to the most recent 20 episodes of this show on all major podcast platforms. But if you become an ATRM patron, a wealth of podcasts awaits you.
Mm-hmm.
You can get your hands or ears on hundreds and hundreds of hours of podcasts. There are over 80 other classic podcast episodes just like this one, and around an additional 70 podcasts that we've created exclusively for our Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about Eddie Murphy movies like 48 Hours in Beverly Hills Cop,
Yep.
Dan Aykroyd and Ghostbusters and the Blues Brothers, JLC and Halloween in the Fog, John Landis' work on American Werewolf in London, and much, much more.
Yeah. Loads more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for that and so much more, you can become an ATRM patron on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and for the complete experience, sign up on Patreon for our entire podcast archive and much more. That's patreon.com/all the right movies.
Yeah. Something to spend your Christmas money on.
An investment worth making for certain.
For the year.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the main event. Why are we talking about Trading Places? Well, for me, this film was right there at the very, very, very start and very early memory for me.
Right.
We had it at home when I was a kid, and it was one of those titles which were very impressionable for me when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, formative years, you know, the most suitable age for a child to be watching a film like this.
Yeah, just watching it every year from 7 to 10. Multiple times.
We've mentioned how lax parenting was in the 80s when it came to VHS consumption, and this one is
misunderstood,
no
I think, is more.
misunderstood. Yeah. I loved it as a kid, and I still do. I think it has a number of layers, some of which are a little muddled, maybe, some of which work fantastically well, but I think the comedy is first rate, the themes are still relevant today, and the cast are superb, a standout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I also think that the film's been getting a little bit of a bad rap in recent years. Obviously, some of it's justified, but I think a little bit of perspective is required to ensure that the film doesn't slip away, and I think we're just the type of chaps to provide that perspective.
Absolutely.
If we do see so ourselves.
Jesus.
Well, you do that bit, Lou, comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not the politically correct couple. Yeah.
No.
What's guaranteed, though, is that it's a hell of a film. It'll make for a hell of a podcast.
Indeed.
And Westy, unless I'm mistaken, you was in the tank last night bragging on your limousine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just outside if you want to go and check it out.
Right outside.
Right outside, yeah. I got this one pretty late, and
Wow.
it was a late edition for me. I'm talking like 5 years ago.
Really?
6 years ago, yeah.
Okay.
5, 6 years ago. It just completely slipped through the net as a John Landis film. I was into Blues Brothers. I loved that. That was my kind of flagship for Landis. American Werewolf. And Coming to America, of course, was the standout for me. I think Coming to America kind of replaced this one for me growing up. That was the one that I went to. It was either, I think it's this or Coming to America that you kind of gravitate towards. It's like the Stones and the Beatles, isn't it, really? It's one or the other. And I think for me, I just wanted to see more of Eddie Murphy, and that's why I love Coming to America. And this felt very much a divided performance with him and Aykroyd.
Okay.
I always preferred Aykroyd and Ghostbusters. And coming to this one a little bit later, it's painful because I can see how lovely this would have been if I watched it when I was 7. Like the nostalgia's there, the Christmas theme, the comedy. Eddie Murphy's just absolutely firing on all cylinders. Aykroyd's hilarious. Everyone's great. Denham Elliott's there, and I would have been like, that's the guy from Raiders. And it would have just been like one after the other. And I should have got to it sooner, but I don't know what put us off for so long. It just felt like I'd seen it all before, and it was just going to be a rehash. But watching it again, it really is its own film. It really does stand on its own, and it really has got a lot to say. It's great, and I do really, really enjoy it. But I just feel like I'm missing something. I feel like there's just a little something there that I really, really like it, but I don't know if I love it.
Okay.
And I think I might have just missed the boat on it. But hearing you two guys talk about it, especially you, Luke, 'cause I know you love it, this is probably going to change your mind. And by the end of this, I'll be totally won over.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, different perspective, having only come to it about 5 years ago, so 5, excited to hear about that.
Yeah.
My rose-tinted glasses, you'll be able to knock them off a little bit.
Unfortunately, I don't want to. But
no, but it's going to happen. I understand.
There was a lot of deep breaths when I was watching it.
Really?
Oh, gee, can they do that?
Wow.
Did they do that? Yeah. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay, finally, looking good, Matt.
Feeling good, Luke.
Very nice. Why do you want to talk about Trading Places?
Well, I'm kind of in the middle, really. It wasn't one I watched as a kid, but I definitely didn't get to it as late as Westy did. So probably late teens, I think, I first gave this one a spin. And I think it's always stood apart a little bit in its era. I think if you say this film has got Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd in, that suggests a certain type of comedy, which this isn't really for the most part. Okay. In a lot of ways, it doesn't particularly feel like it does come from the 80s. And I think that's really emphasised by having Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy and Denham Elliott in there as well. So it's got an interesting clash of eras to it. It's got a bit more on its mind than a usual comedy, a bit more to say, especially for 80s comedies. It's seasonal, so it makes sense to talk about now. There are moments of complete hilarity in it. There are moments that make you think. There are moments that don't stand up to a lot of scrutiny these days. So there's a surprising amount to unpack with this one, I think.
There certainly is. Much more than your average 80s comedy. Trading Places was written by Herschel Weingrod and Timothy Harris, directed by John Landis, and produced by Aaron Russo for Paramount Pictures. Filmed on location in Philadelphia, New York, and the US Virgin Islands, it was released on June 8th, 1983. It's another outstanding cast for us here, including Dan Aykroyd as Lewis Winthorpe III, Eddie Murphy as Billy Ray Valentine, and they are supported by Jamie Lee Curtis, Don Amici, Ralph Bellamy, Denham Elliott, Paul Gleason. We're headed to the streets of Philadelphia for the opening scene of Trading Places.
Yeah.
The beginning.
We open with the less than subtle images of wealth and poverty coexisting in the city, and Matt, you're starting us off here. The opening titles.
Yeah, I mean, you've nailed it there. It is less than subtle, but that's fine sometimes because it's effective. And it tells you straight away what the story's going to be about. And, you know, one of the most effective parts of the film is the location shooting, Philadelphia, very cinematic city. I mean, one shot in particular, it really looks like it's shot on the same street as Rocky from the training sequence, where is an orange someone throws at him and he catches it.
Yeah. And there's a shot of the Rocky statue as well, isn't there?
The Rocky statue as well. But it is all about introducing the themes that heart of the film. So it's about the juxtaposition that you get here. You get the shots of immense privilege, the boating on the river, which if you're from this country, you see that you always associate that with Oxford and Cambridge University. And I assume it's the same in America. It's a sport only played by the elite, played by the rich. And then you get the shots of the Salvation Army with their sharing is caring adverts. So rich and poor side by side. You get the imagery of the financial market side by side with blue collar jobs like the hoagie restaurant or the haulage trains. And it's kind of blink and you'll miss it. But if you look at those haulage trains, the hauling Tropicana orange juice, which is a nice little nod to the climax of the film. So yeah, it's all about that juxtaposition. I think the most effective one is that shot of Coleman opening the front door to Louis' grandly decorated house. And then the next thing you see is that homeless guy in the shop doorway just trying to keep himself warm under some newspapers. So subtle, no, but effective.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of Beverly Hills Cop, this opening title sequence, isn't it? Yeah, big, long, kind of like establishing shots of the city. It's on for 3.5 minutes, this title sequence.
Long,
It's really long.
Yeah. I'll go straight off the back of this with what Matt said there. Throws an orange and he catches it. There's so many references to orange juice throughout this whole film.
Yeah, there
It's
is.
ridiculous. It's not like The Godfather where there's something foreboding, but it's still there. And, Denim Elliott just preparing the breakfast in that chef's hat is probably one of the best images. And I would like that to be on the screen for 3.5 minutes, if I'm honest. That would be my title sequence. Just Denim Elliott doing the orange juice in that hat. And there's so many I am privileged bits in this. From just the, there's your breakfast, somebody standing over you, waking you up, and just that quick cut to him getting shaved. You don't see him enjoying his breakfast. You don't know if he's had it or not. Mm-hmm. And then his pork bellies, and he's all about work. Mm-hmm. But the bit for me in Aykroyd, you know exactly what you're setting up with, is when he's just standing outside waiting for that car door to be open.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
What a prick. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, it just infuriated us straight away. And I was like, I know exactly what Aykroyd performance I'm getting from this. Mm-hmm. He just sets the character up perfectly. I think it's just really, really, really well done. And then when he walks into the building and it's just, good morning, Mr. Winthorpe. Good morning, Mr. Winthorpe.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And you can tell he doesn't know who anyone is.
No.
He doesn't care about these people. It's just a face, and he just answers back, good morning. Good morning, just being polite. Mm-hmm. But then going into that office and that fire's on, and it just looks incredible. It's like, imagine that was your job. That's where you work. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. It's just so over the top, the visual nature of it being this overly excessive world that I can't stand, to be honest. Yeah. This kind of world, this elite world where everyone thinks they're better than anyone else just because they've got money. Just it really fucking pisses me off. So to see that wound down and spun around and having it played on its head and taking the piss out of it a little bit, I really enjoy that. Yeah. I really enjoy how flamboyant this is in regards to that, because it should be laughed at, but it's not far from the truth.
No, it isn't. I think it's accurate.
That's the kind of takeaway we get from the film. It is grounded in that reality, but they kind of take the piss out of that reality, which I enjoy.
Yeah, great. I mean, Winthorpe's got a butler, for Christ's sake. Yeah. It's insane.
And for the role of Coleman, John Gielgud and Ronnie Barker had been considered before Denham Elliott, but Gielgud had played a very similar role 2 years previously in Arthur, for which he won an Oscar. And allegedly, Ronnie Barker would only take the role on the condition it was filmed no more than 7 miles from his home. That's
such an odd request, considering he lives in England.
Yeah.
And he knows it's set in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's definitely more than 7 miles, Ronnie. And 7's a very particular number.
Why didn't you just say no?
Yeah.
Well, exactly, yeah. He would have been great, though, I think.
You would have been brilliant. Love Ronnie Barker.
It's Denham Elliott's reactions to things.
He's just the voice of reason. He's the moral compass of the whole
he's
film.
Fantastic, yeah.
He does a lot with just like a raised eyebrow, doesn't he?
Oh, he does, yeah. The first person to welcome Lewis into Duke and Duke takes off his scarf and his coat. Good morning, Folsey. That's George Folsey Jr., an exec producer from the film.
Oh, right, nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a deleted scene where he also welcomes in Billy Ray into the building when he gets his job on the first day.
Oh, right. Like it mirrors it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then after this, we get the introduction of Duke and Duke. The music kicks up to an almost regal march. Their existence is very similar to Winthorpe, so we know that they're operating on a kind of similar level. Yeah. But these two are elevated because they've got multiple staff clucking around them.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I've always found it weird that they appear to live in the same house.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a different wing or whatever, but considering their constant bickering, I'd have thought they would have, when they have the means, I would have thought they would have liked to live apart.
Possibly, but I think they're just kind of married to the lifestyle, aren't they, really?
I agree, yeah.
Kind of married to each other because they can't do without each other, really.
Yeah, I think they're codependent.
Yeah, definitely.
We're introduced to their way of thinking in the limo, and there's already an abundance of character building here. Mortimer's obsessed by money. It's the only thing he's bothered about. Randolph, for some reason, is interested in hereditary versus environment.
Yeah.
Very, very convenient that really plays a part in the plot later, but, it sets up their bet.
It's there. Take it if you want.
Yeah.
And their dealings on pork bellies tells you just how much money we're talking about here. Because of Winthorpe's advice, they make an extra $347,000.
Yeah.
Not $347,000 in total.
Extra.
Yeah, this is extra.
They always make money.
Mm-hmm. And Ray Milland was originally cast as Mortimer, and he was famous for roles like Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder and Billy Wilder's The Lost Weekend. And for that film, he won an Oscar, and that actually made him the first Welsh actor to win one. But for this, he didn't pass the physical, which the part required, so they couldn't get him insured.
Right.
Well, I mean, probably for the best, because he did die 3 years later.
Oh, really?
And I imagine seeing Jamie Lee's rushes might have tipped him over the edge, to be quite honest.
Landis' attention then passed over to Don Amici, who was told that he hadn't made a film in 13 years and that his residual checks were being sent to someone in Phoenix. Amici was considered dead by all accounts.
Wow.
But thankfully, he was alive and well and had been spotted daily walking in Santa Monica. And when Landis asked him why he'd been out of the movie game for so long, he said he just hadn't received any offers.
Yeah, he hadn't done anything since 1970.
Yeah.
Wow.
He'd done theatre and stuff like that. He's actually referenced, if you can remember, he's referenced in The French Connection. Cloudy says, "Can you remember that old actor, Don Amici?
Don
He
Amici.
lives in this building."
Yeah, he lives in this building. Yes.
I thought he said Delamitri. I'm always the last to know.
Oh, boom, boom, Westy.
Very good.
So, 13 years out of the game, Amici would go on to star in over a dozen more films in his career, one of which 2 years later was Cocoon, for which he won an Oscar.
He won an Oscar, yeah.
Yeah, he did,
Unbelievable.
He's fantastic in that. I haven't seen that film for years, but I remember him being fantastic in that.
It's great. And then when Duke and Duke arrive at the office, they double down on their privilege with the way they treat Billy Ray. Randolph just steps over him like he's not there. Eddie Murphy here. Jesus. Billy Ray pops out of nowhere and he's this volcano immediately. Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Vietnam did this to me, but I'm not bitter. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Yeah. How you doing? Spare a poor war veteran some change. I'm on my knees for life. He just goes and goes and goes. It's so funny. And then Morton replies, "I have no money to give you," which I'll admit is a line that I try and crowbar into everyday conversation.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of this, isn't there? Yeah.
So that rapid fire dialogue.
Yeah.
Jesus, it's amazing. But then when Billy Ray starts breaking down, grabbing his legs, Mortimer slams on him with his paper.
Yeah.
And this is what we're dealing with here. Mortimer's got absolutely no concern for this apparent disabled person. He could easily spare that extra $347,000 and it would go unnoticed, but he doesn't bat an eyelid and he physically assaults Billy Ray.
Yeah.
It's
Mortimer's by far the worst of the two.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
horrific.
despicable,
He
really,
is, yeah.
to be honest.
Billy Ray's sobs of "I really don't appreciate this" as he's being wheeled away is hilarious.
It's just, he's electric, isn't he? As soon as you see him.
Unbelievable. Then the kicker, at the end of this scene, the plaque outside the Heritage Club, which reads, "With liberty and justice for all, members only."
Yeah. Appreciate
Not
it.
subtle. Got a lot of soul.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things in the film that are on the nose, but Landis judges most of them just right, and these character intros are superb.
So far.
Coming next is where two worlds collide, and the Dukes concoct a diabolical plan. Matt, it's over to you first.
Yeah, because this is where you get the first conflict of the film, really, between Billy Ray and Louis, when he bumps in from outside the Heritage Club, which leads into that chase. And it's just the most outrageous way to start, because Louis immediately jumps to the conclusion Billy Ray is trying to rob him. All he's done is bump into him.
Sorry about that.
And he couldn't be more apologetic.
He's really apologetic.
He's really trying to help.
Yeah.
Like, it's the one time Billy Ray isn't trying to get anything over on anyone, and it still goes completely wrong for him. And it's that combination that the film does well of juxtaposing the comic and the series. So obviously it is a funny scene, but the serious underlying point is that the cop scene argument between a poor black man and a rich white man, and they pick sides immediately.
Yeah.
They are straight on Louis' side. And Louis, I mean, Westy said it at the start, he's such a prick. And he just continues to be such a prick here. That he's just the absolute voice of arrogant privilege, like trying to tell the cops what to do. In there, after him.
He's getting away.
There's such a serious tone, but it's masked in comedy throughout every single scene of this film.
It is,
Which we'll get into later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Louis, he's just that kind of prick who thinks he needs to take charge of everything. And it's just typical coward behavior as well. Like, he's running after Billy, but he always makes sure the cops are either in front of him or right behind him. So he's not going to really get caught up in this. And that line he comes out with, people like this were a menace to decent society. We then see what decent society means to Louis when no one puts their hands up when Billy Ray asks if anyone's a lawyer.
Is there a lawyer in the house?
Yeah, they just cough and they shuffle and they look anywhere but at Billy. And then Mortimer coming out with that racist slur about Billy Ray in his background. So, yeah, funny scene, but it's got a real, like, thematic importance behind it.
Yeah.
Just before that, when he's outside and he's talking to the policeman, he sees them and he puts on his blind Stevie Wonder act.
Yeah.
He's talking about being in Vietnam. He's like, I was with the Green Berets, Special Unit Battalion, Commando, Airborne Tactic, Specialist Tactic, Unit Battalion.
Agent Orange.
He's just Agent Orange. He's just saying
that
words.
Was me.
That was my name, Agent Orange.
Another reference to Orange, which is great.
Yeah. And when they pick him up from his little cart on wheels,
It's that timing, isn't
I
it?
can see. I have legs.
Oh my God.
It's beautiful. I don't know what to say. Oh, wonderful.
I'll go for a little bit after that when the Dukes realise that they might have some kind of wager on their hands. And they come up with this diabolical plan.
Oh, horrific.
It's a really good setup, and you hate them from this moment on. The best thing about this is there's no reveal about how much they're waging, and you don't know how much it's going to be. It's like the usual amount, and then the shake on it. But they're destroying people's lives. They're literally, like, this guy has managed the company. He's very, very good at his job. Yes, he's entitled. Yes, he's a bit of a prick, but he's making the money.
Yeah.
And they're just bored by being alive. They've just got too much money, too much privilege, too much entitlement, and they just want to ruin somebody's life because they can. I felt quite depressed after watching this bit. I was like, well, fucking hell, well, what's the point of this? We're a couple of dicks. And they're trying to prove the point, and that's fair enough. That, but he comes from a background that's not very privileged. He comes from it's nothing to do with that. Anybody can be a success. Again, this is Landis putting a very serious tone and masking it in comedy, whereas it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your background. You can achieve things. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter anything. You've just got to be given the opportunity, and you'll be able to do it, as Valentine does. And then double crosses them and comes back on it, which is why I think it's got an important message, this film. But I don't think it's just got so many, though. It's
got loads.
It's got too many, so you can't really hook onto it. It's lost in all of this incredible comedy that kind of wraps it up, and you miss these themes, I think. And this is one of their moments where you go, there's not much comedy wrapped on this. And it is despicable, but a really, really brilliant setup and a really, really great concept for a film.
Yeah, they are deliciously evil, these two brothers.
Yeah, dickheads.
Yeah. And I think this will be a constant in our conversation. The film comes under a lot of criticism, scrutiny, but I think there's some of it is undue. Mortimer's comments about what's wrong with Billy Ray, he says the N-word.
Yeah.
An N-word, at least. Yeah. Obviously horrific. But if you think that the film celebrates that word and Mortimer's uses of it, then you've just badly misread the film.
It doesn't celebrate it at all. It's so loaded. And so nastily said, and it's elongated as well, the way he says it. It's an obvious put down.
This guy is obviously the bad guy. Yeah, we're obviously not on his side. Definitely. He's an absolute dick.
Yeah.
And from there, one of the great, great, great comedy scenes. Eddie Murphy at his finest. As good, if not better, than the bar scene from 48 Hours when Billy Ray is in jail.
Yeah.
Which contrasts beautifully with Winthorpe and Penelope's romantic meal in the previous scene. Log fire, crepe Suzette, all of that shit.
You have it. Straight in the bin.
But Jesus Christ, Eddie here. Billy Ray is putting on this big show to prove how much of a tough more 4 years. He's a chain belt in Kung Fu. Bruce Lee was his teacher. And then he watched this. And then he proceeds to do this ludicrous routine, loads of heavy breathing. The quarter blood technique. You do that, a quarter blood will drop out of a person's body. That is dialogue to die for. That's amazing.
It's just so off the cuff.
It really is.
It really reminds me of Stir Crazy, this whole scene.
Yeah. It rolls off the tongue.
Really prior as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he modelled himself on him, did he?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The three people around Billy Ray are lapping up this show, but the two big fellas aren't having any of it. So when they brought you in here and booked you, you was crying like a pussy. Yeah.
That guy is amazing.
That guy just says that.
Casting.
Billy Ray says that threw tear gas in my face, and that's the kind of shit they use on crowds, and I still walked in here like a man, so get out of my face, all right? It's just one after the other, because I'm a karate man bruised on the inside. They show their weakness. Oh, wow. Just dialogue left, right, and centre, not just from Eddie. It ain't Gooby nor Jive Turkey, so close to Thanksgiving. That's great.
That's great, yeah. You used that on me a couple of weeks ago for being a dick in the group, I believe.
That guy is a musician and writer. He's called Big Ron Taylor. He was only 30 years older in this film.
He's not 30 years old. Is he?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Tough paper round.
Yeah. Looks like he ate the papers.
And even more famous is Giancarlo Esposito, who plays cellmate number 2 here.
Yeah.
He's probably best known to modern audiences as Gus Fring from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
But he's in loads of great stuff.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And talking about starring opposite Murphy, Esposito said, at that time, I was probably a little jealous of Eddie Murphy. A little jealous, really. Because you work your early career to be a dramatic actor, and then this guy, a comedian with an affable personality who's incredibly talented, just shoots right by you to stardom. But that day, we became friends.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, thank God.
I mean, not surprising that Eddie shot straight to stardom. That delivery is out of this world.
Yeah.
Rapid fire, hilarious, instantly quotable. If you were unsure about his comic talents, having only seen him maybe on SNL, this scene puts pay to that.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. It's one of my, if not my favourite comic performance of all time. Not just this scene, but Eddie in general.
Yeah.
But I mean, all of them as a comic performer in this scene, it's outstanding.
Yeah, he's one in a million, really.
Oh, he's amazing. And 22 years old.
22.
Yeah.
What?
He's so hungry in this film. It just makes it so watchable because he's just electric and really, really hungry.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the opening of Trading Places. It's going to get funnier, it's going to get more offensive, and maybe a little bit more narratively confusing as we go. But it's a hell of a start.
Yeah.
The director.
John Landis is the man at the helm of Trading Places, coming off the back of 3 consecutive classics, Animal House, The Blues Brothers, and An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
This is probably when he was at the height of his powers.
Yeah.
Westy, what do you think of his work here?
I mean, it's very John Landis. He comes to this knowing exactly what he wants to do comedy-wise. I think he's got a lot to say. This feels very much like a 70s film to me. It feels like it's grounded in, like 78, 79. Maybe it doesn't feel like an 80s comedy. I wouldn't go Trading Places. It's a 1983, defines the 80s.
No.
I'd Coming to America is probably more of the 80s comedy. This
I
is
agree.
a bit
Yeah,
more,
totally.
this has a bit more grit to it. It has a bit more zest to it. And what I want to touch on is just how, like we've said, he introduces comedy in these scenes that are just so serious and have these themes that are just so kind of repellent and hard to deal with, but he deals with them through comedy. And I'll go specifically for Louis loses his job, goes to prison, ends up with a prostitute, dresses up as Santa, starving, pissed, and goes to kill himself. And it's still funny.
Yes.
I don't understand how that works.
Even that scene when he's trying to kill himself
It's
is
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then it just starts raining. He's on the bus. He has eats a salmon. You're fairing up. It makes you think like, well, maybe all of the shit that we think about and all of the stuff that we stress over, just don't worry about it so much. Like, it's just life, isn't it? Shit happens.
Yes, it
get
is.
on
Shit
with
happens.
it. And that's what I feel Landis is bringing to this, is that, shit does happen and you can deal with it. And The Blues Brothers, for me, is Landis' best, I'm going to say. I think.
Right.
Okay.
It's just so fucking original and clever and brilliant. But this is kind of, it's up there with less cocaine.
A lot less cocaine.
A lot less cocaine.
A lot less.
Yeah.
And he really has something to say. And this film, it might be lambasted now. It might be saying, it is very racist. Yes, it does have these themes. But he dives into it 100% as if he's friends with everybody. He's not attacking anybody. He's exploring these themes without any kind of attack. He lets that to the Dukes to do that. And everybody comes together at the end of it. And it's such a warm film when you finish watching it. And I think that was what he intended. So for me, it's a Landis comedy. It really is up there. I saw The Blues Brothers first. It's why it's kind of it sits, but you can see he's all over this, and he's trying to say a lot more than people are picking up from it. And I think that's a shame, because it is far more intelligent than people think it is.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And this was my first Landis film. I think American Werewolf came quickly after it, but this was the first one for certain.
That makes sense.
And we've alluded to it already, but Landis really hammers home this social disparity in class and race in his visuals. Those credits highlight the contrast of classes coexisting in the same city, sometimes on the same street corner. It also clearly highlights the racial economic differences in the city. That shot that you mentioned, Matt Winthorpe being woken, a couple of shots before that is a black man sleeping rough on the streets of Philly in winter. That ain't no picnic.
Yeah, with newspapers as well. I mean, that's not war, is it?
Horrific. No.
Yeah.
There's a scene which I think really exemplifies this representation, visual representation of race in particular, when the Dukes give Ezra, the server at the Heritage Club, $5. Maybe he'll go to the movies by himself. Half of it is from me.
That's great.
What
that
a
moment.
prick.
Yeah.
Half of that is from me. I go to the
Thank
movies.
you, Mr. Mortimer.
By myself.
By myself.
He's so fucking furious, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
He's just like, he's a human being, man.
$5, Jesus Christ.
Outrageous.
But it feels incredibly symbolic that he's serving the Dukes up a glass of milk each.
Yeah.
A glass of milk that's the whitest drink in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an odd thing for two 70-somethings to be drinking, but it suggests a few things. It suggests that they haven't grown up, that they've been raised in an environment of privilege, haven't experienced life, and have been in a permanent state of arrested development since their childhood.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
But there's also a plate of Oreo cookies on that tray as well.
Milk and cookies.
Yeah. And I think that's a not too subtle representation of races coexisting. My interpretation of that, outer brown cookie keeps the white centre secure, which is metaphorical of the film's themes. So loads to take from that small scene. And Landis sprinkles this throughout the film. I mentioned earlier that a few things are on the nose, but it feels to me that Landis really has a bee in his bonnet about social inequalities in the world.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
It's hammering home here, and I think it's a ballsy move to make a comedy like this. If you consider that Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation, came out 2 weeks later. I mean, nothing against that film. It's great. We've talked about it on Double Feature recently.
It is, yeah.
But the level of writing, the narrative, the dialogue in this film is miles above Vacation. And I think what is also impressive is that this weighty message in the film about race and class doesn't bog the comedy down. It's akin to how Mel Brooks tackled a similar narrative in Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles, yeah.
I think it's Landis's finest work from a directing point of view here.
From a thematic point of view, he's definitely got something to say.
Without doubt.
Yeah, agreed. I think this is the most mature work Landis has ever done. Like all his other films, I think they all have this very snarky quality, like he's pulling faces at everyone behind the camera to make them laugh. But this, I think, because he's looked at the script that he's been given, and we'll obviously talk about the writing in a bit, and he realises that, as he's saying, there's some depth to this writing. Yes, it's a comedy, but it does talk about those serious issues you brought up, race, class, capitalism. So I think all the goofiness years you get with Landis is very reined in. And, you know, we've mentioned the Blues Brothers, and for me, that's one I came to quite late, so it's not one of my favourites like this for you two, but I like it. But my main criticism of that has always been it's quite a baggy film. It's very broad. It's really excessive. It's really self-indulgent, and that's fine. But Landis knows that's not right for Trading Places. Trading Places needs to be sharp and it needs to be refined.
It's like, a lot leaner, this film.
A lot lean. Like, you think about Blues Brothers, you think about, like, the restaurant scene where Aykroyd and Belushi are just riffing for ages.
Yeah. You can take scenes out of Blues Brothers. You can't take anything out of this.
You take about 45 minutes out of Blues Brothers.
Exactly. The Twiggy scene. That's what I mentioned there again.
Yeah, it's insane.
And I think with this, Landis is just absolutely stamping down on stuff like that. Yes, he lets Murphy improvise because you can't stop him, basically. But even then, the improvisation still feels very contained. Landis doesn't let it drag. He maybe let Murphy do it, but he cut it out in the edit to keep it sharp, to keep it lean, because there is that underlying seriousness to the plot here. And I think Landis recognises that, and I think he just grows up a little bit with this one.
Yeah, very much.
I mean, it's quite laughable if you said to someone that Trading Places is John Landis' most mature film.
Yeah.
And people go, what are you talking about? But it really is. Like, if you look at it,
totally is. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because it's got a lot of things that overshadow it, like the racism, the language, the outdated ideas, Jamie Lee's nudity, all of that overshadow what is a really smart film with a lot to say.
Yeah. And Landis came on board having received the script from Jeff Katzenberg, who was a Paramount executive at the time.
Yeah.
The original title was Black and White,
Yeah.
which he didn't like and had a change, which, definitely changed that.
Yeah.
But he later observed the irony that he would go on to direct the music video for Black and White.
Yeah, Michael Jackson's Black and White.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, Black and White. Could it have been a worse title?
That's a terrible title.
So
terrible,
unknown.
terrible title.
Yeah.
I mean, you may as well have just went with Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is racist.
Yeah.
And Landis said he was drawn to the material because, in his words, it was very old-fashioned, a social comedy very much like the screwball stuff done in the 1930s, but he said he gave it the 80s twist by adding in the bad language and the nudity.
Yeah.
He certainly did that. The cast got on famously with Landis. Eddie Murphy would go on to make a further 2 films with him. Jamie Lee Curtis said she owed her career to Landis.
Wow.
And Aykroyd said, "We were under the hand of a great director. I basically did just what Landis told me. He's very much an old school director like Cecil B. DeMille. All that's missing is the riding crop, the boots, and the bullhorn." I'll end on a wonderful quote from the man himself. He said, "My lasting memory is that it was a good experience on Trading Places. It had a wonderful cast, a great script, and it was an absolute pleasure to make."
You can tell everyone's having a great time.
Of course.
Yeah.
The cast.
Continuing our trend of wonderful ensemble casts, Trading Places is no exception. We're focusing on the main players here, and I think I'm right in saying that they are 3 firm ATRM favourites.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I would
And we're
say so.
starting off with Eddie Murphy, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's just worth remembering this is only his second big screen role after 48 hours. And when you bear that in mind, it just reminds you just how confident he was straight out of the gate. He knew exactly who he was. He knew how good he looked on screen. And he knows how funny he is. And that's what he brings here. This performance just oozes confidence and charisma. And I fully believe he's the only person that Landis would let improvise because he's that good at it. And why would you stop him improvising when he's that good? Because he is hysterically funny.
Morte!
When he just read, exactly
What it is.
yeah. And he just bowls you over with his complete charm offensive, and he just makes every line sing. Like, no one else in this film could break the fourth wall and get away with it, but Murphy can.
Does it a couple of times as well, doesn't he?
2 times. That's it. People forget that he does it twice. Don't like doing it twice and nailing it both times.
Yeah.
But it's a performance. It's got dramatic weight to it as well. Like, Billy Ray knows deep down something isn't right in this situation. He knows something is off with the Dukes, and he plays it just so subtly, just underneath the surface. Yes, I'm going to enjoy all the trappings I've suddenly been given, but I know that there's a catch to all this. He's not an idiot. And he plays that really effectively, and there's a real smartness to him. You completely believe, actually, put it in language he understands, and he will understand the commodities brokerage, and he will make some great calls. You know, he's really smart with this. And the overriding feeling I get from Murphy is, yes, he's supremely confident, but he's not cocky with it at this point. I think he appreciates the comic chops that Dan Aykroyd has. I think he appreciates that Jamie Lee Curtis is Hollywood royalty practically, and he can learn from her. And I really think he respects the hell out of Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy for everything they've done in their careers, which by this point is decades upon decades of great work. So he knows how good he is, but he knows how good everyone else is as well. And I just get this sense he's just learning from everyone in this film.
He's electric, but very humble in his performance, I think.
There's a humility here. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And it's the last time he'd play second fiddle to anybody.
Yeah.
He was always going to be a leading actor after this.
Yeah.
In that escargot scene, he's got so much confidence about the wheat harvest.
Yeah.
And he fits in that environment. He's settled in, and you believe it from Eddie Murphy.
It's like the coffee grounds scene in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
It's like when he just goes serious and it's like, drugs and coffee grounds. And there's no
yeah.
comedy there. And okay, I'll take him seriously. He just switches. It's great.
He does.
For 22 years old as well.
22. Jesus,
ridiculous.
How is that possible?
I have no idea.
And what's sobering is that we're double that right now.
Yeah. Thanks.
Wow.
Thanks for the
We're
reminder.
talking about it.
Nice one. Cheers. We're closer to the Dukes than we are to Murphy.
Yeah.
Amazing.
As mentioned, originally the film was called Black and White and set up as a vehicle for Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor after their Stir Crazy success.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does, totally. After Pryor's notorious incident where he set himself on fire while freebasing crack cocaine, Paramount had to look for another lead.
And they actually weren't keen on Murphy initially because they'd seen Rushers on 48 Hours, actually, and they hadn't liked them. But when that film tested with audiences, Murphy's scores were just absolutely through the roof. So that's when they suggested he would be a good fit for Billy Ray.
Yeah, at the time, Landis didn't know who he was, but he flew to New York to meet him and was instantly enamored by him, of course.
Of course he would be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Allegedly, Murphy suggested recasting the Winthorpe part because he felt uncomfortable acting alongside Gene Wilder. He didn't want to be seen as a Richard Pryor clone.
Yeah, that makes total sense, doesn't
definitely.
It does.
Eddie Murphy improvised some of the dialogue in the film. Some, I would imagine all of it. It was something that was natural to him and something that would be relied on heavily when he's filmed Beverly Hills Cop. The Randy Jackson bit in the limo was improvised, as was the quarter blood technique. Just falls out of his mouth.
It's just outstanding.
Amazing.
And Aykroyd said about him, Eddie was just starting out and developing his comedic gift and comedic voice. To see and be a part of a talented merchant like that was part of film history.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a huge comic force at this time, and this film is a major part of his growing success.
Yeah.
Next up is the most pompous asshole in Philadelphia, Louis Winthorpe III.
I thought you were going to say me there. Was that not in Philadelphia?
Expertly played by Dan Aykroyd, not Westy.
Imagine I mean, he's just so diabolical in this. But I love his arc because you feel
great.
sorry for him, and you do end up loving the guy. He's all right.
He is.
It's just one of them people where you don't really want to be friends with him. He's just a bit of a dick. He's so entitled. He's so privileged.
Yeah.
But it's what Aykroyd does really, really well, is this kind of over the top, really privileged, really straight down the line idiot, I guess, who's just completely baffling at how stupid he is. He's just so set in his ways. And I think when Aykroyd's set in his ways, he delivers every single time. He does here. He does in Dragnet. It's a very similar kind of performance where he's just, that's what I believe in. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to talk fast and I'm going to get that done. Some of the lines are so fucking funny when he delivers them. It's just so amazing. I'll get into it with the scene that I'm going to talk about later, but when he's running through that party screaming with that gun, it kills me.
It's hilarious.
He's just,
It's hilarious.
It's fucking brilliant. And the quote that I put at the top, when he's just so entitled, he's just come out of prison, he's had a fight, he's tried to be raped. We're talking about serious stuff here. And those men wanted to have sex with me. They bent me over and did this and it's just they stole his clothes. Like, at what point is this not hideous? It's awful.
Yeah, no.
He really, really sells that. It's not dour because he's too stupid to understand how pathetic his life could be without this.
Yeah.
When he's talking to the guys at the start, it's got very much a Patrick Bateman kind of American Psycho vibe.
Very much.
And
Very much.
And I think, well, is that where they've borrowed this from? It's all just very entitled, all the paintings, everything on the wall, and it's like, Penelope tonight, and yes, she's going to be there, and yes, and everything just works for me.
It's not luck.
Exactly. It's not luck. But yeah, I think he just completely sells the performance, completely sells the character. And it's to Aykroyd's absolute credit that you're clapping at the end for this guy because you really shouldn't be. And that's just down to Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. I mean, his arc is magnificent. He goes through a really shit time.
Yeah.
He's got loads of standout moments. That scene when he comes into the tennis club dressed like a pimp in completely mismatched clothes and a fur coat. Yeah. Jesus, he's hit rock bottom. But I do like the fact that although his clothes are an abomination, he's still got a jacket and tie on to kind of maintain a modicum of dignity. Those guys, those American Psycho guys, they're singing that song. It's one of the worst things
that's awful.
Ever seen in my life.
Awful.
Muffy referenced in that song. Muffy is played by Jamie Lee's sister, Kelly Curtis.
All right, nice.
All right.
And then you've got that scene where he's desperate, where he's trying to hock his watch.
Bo Diddley.
Bo Diddley in there as a pawnbroker is amazing. 6955 retail. You got a receipt? It tells the time simultaneously in Monte Carlo, Beverly Hills, London, Paris, Rome, and Stade. Fucking Stade.
As if Bo Diddley gives a fuck about that. Diddley squad.
Great. If you were to look for that Rochefoucauld right now, you'd set you back around $30,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's an expensive timepiece.
Lovely piece.
At the time, there was a lot of speculation about Aykroyd being a bankable star without John Belushi, obviously famous as acting and writing partner because he died the year previously. And apparently people were saying it was going to be like having Abbott without Costello.
Yeah, and because of this, Paramount weren't happy with the casting choice. Landis was adamant, having worked with him on the Blues Brothers, and Aykroyd made it palatable to Paramount by accepting a much lower fee to be in the film.
Yeah. I mean, I do get the concerns because I think we've talked about in the past, Aykroyd works better as part of a double act.
He does.
In here, Ghostbusters, Blues Brothers, Dragnet. When he doesn't have a strong core lead to bounce off, he sometimes comes undone.
Yeah.
Aykroyd's very proud of Trading Places and considers it up there with his very best work. He said, I count that movie as AAA. It was intelligent and funny and had so much going for it. It was really satisfying.
Mm-hmm. He meant triple Aykroyd, but I buy that, didn't he? AAA.
And finally, it's always a pleasure to be talking about Jamie Lee Curtis, certainly when we're talking about a very important role in her career as Ophelia. I think with any Jamie Lee Curtis performance, you're going to get a bundle of personality, you're going to get a load of magnetism and a good dollop of comedy. And we get that in spades here. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's so good in this.
I think unfortunate that she is kind of relegated to the background a lot of the time. She plays a hooker, which is not a great look. It's a huge stereotype. Yeah. And she only has a handful of scenes. And two of them she's naked in.
Yeah.
But in spite of these negatives, she puts in a hugely memorable performance. She needs a strong personality for us to believe that she's got a smart business head on her shoulders. She may well be a prostitute with all the perceived seediness that comes with that, but she's got a long-term plan and is strong-willed enough to execute it. And I buy that completely from Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, I buy that 100%.
It's no wonder that she went on to have the career that she has had, because she really, really shines here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do like her dynamism with Aykroyd. There's a very sweet scene between the two of them when she turns her client away and she nurses Louis back to health.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact that she has to undress to do it is a fucking outrage. An outrage. Yeah. But it shows there's some genuine affection there, even if she says she's only protecting her investment. But in amongst all the mayhem and insanity, there's some nice emotion at play there. And I really, watching it this time around, I really bought that in her performance. She brings that emotion to the film, which is lacking from the other two characters, the other two actors.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there were also problems here with Landis getting Jamie Lee Curtis on board. He said, what really got me in trouble was Jamie Lee, because up to that point, she'd only done horror pictures. She'd just made Halloween 2, for which she'd been paid $1 million, and we paid her $70,000 for this. I was called into the head of the studio's office, and he said, this woman's a B-movie actress. And I said, not after this movie.
Love that. Can you imagine getting paid $1 million for Halloween 2, a crappy horror sequel, and only getting 70 grand for Trading Places? I mean, concern was understandable, because how many horror movie stars have one serious dramatic role to their name, or one good serious role to their name, let alone the incredible crossover that Jamie Lee performed?
Yeah.
Up until that point, she'd starred in Halloween, Halloween 2, The Fog, Road Games, Terror Train, and Prom Night, all horror films.
Yeah.
Only horror films that she starred in.
And it's a really downhill, that. From
really
one to the
is.
next is just, it's a decline.
It started off good.
Yeah.
And she had recently turned down a part in Psycho 2 as well.
Right, yeah. And Jamie Lee Curtis said that she knew her time was up in the horror genre and she needed to try something else. She said, no one else wanted me. I guarantee you John Landis was the only person who said she's going to play this part. And without that moment, I wouldn't have the career that I've got now.
Wow. Amazing. Sliding doors moment.
Definitely.
Having said all of that, there, we've alluded to it. There's the little issue of her nudity in the film. Mm-hmm. She said, I was 21 years old. I think she was a little bit older than that, to be honest. I think she's got that wrong. But she said the part required Ophelia to take her dress off. She said, did I like doing it? No. Did I feel embarrassed that I was doing it? Yes. Did I look okay? Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Did I know what I was doing? Yeah. Did I like it? No. Was I doing it because it was the job? Yes. And I certainly wouldn't do it today. It's the last thing I would do now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's kind of the rotten core at the center of the industry, isn't it? If she'd said no to the nudity, they would have gotten somebody else in for the part, and we would have missed out on Jamie Lee Curtis's amazing career.
Yeah. And Landis said, the only character in the script I had a problem with, because she's such a fantasy, is Ophelia, the classic hooker with a heart of gold. I thought, how the fuck am I going to get away with this? But he then made a documentary made up of old horror movie trailers called Coming Soon, which she narrated. And he said she was just so funny and smart and sexy, and I thought she'd be terrific.
Yeah, I mean, she's tailor-made for this role. Yeah. It really required somebody of her acting skill and presence, screen presence, to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Could have been like a two-dimensional character in the wrong hands.
Could have been really throwaway, yeah.
It could have been.
I'll be honest, if I was directing this and I got Jamie Lee Curtis at this point in her career, I would expect it to be two-dimensional. She absolutely delivers. And
Landis
saw something that nobody else did.
Exactly, because she's not fantastic in Halloween and
she's
all
not
of those
fantastic
other horror
in anything
films.
Before this.
No, she's not.
And she's absolutely amazing in this.
Yeah, she is.
And it's been observed that there's absolutely no need for Ophelia to be a prostitute, which I kind of agree with. Her job has no bearing on the plot other than she's sitting on a considerable number of T-bills, earning interest.
Well, surely the writers can't have been that short-sighted to think this is the only way a woman could make considerable amount of money in the 80s. Yeah. It also feels like it's a bit of an excuse just for her to undress in front of Louis for that scene. That scene.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need her to undress. Have you seen the dress?
Yeah,
you don't need her to take it off. It's
nothing's
fine.
left to the imagination.
Not a jot. It's fine with that.
It has been argued that the character of Ophelia is an example of what's called or known as the Smurfette principle in movies, a woman in a largely male-dominated cast who's there to be an attractive damsel in distress.
Yeah.
However, flipping it on its head, Ophelia is the one who rescues Louis ultimately. Yeah. And I like the writing there.
Without her, they haven't got any money.
No, they don't.
And when asked about her preparation for the part, Curtis said, I'd love to say I went out and turned a couple of tricks on 42nd Street, but I didn't.
Surely she wouldn't love to have said that.
No, definitely not.
However, we do have this film to thank for JLC's signature short hair. She had long hair at the time, and the costume designer, Deborah Doolman, thought that short hair would suit the character. Obviously, it goes under the wig a lot easier as well, the hooker wig.
Yeah.
Still a surprise every time that
It
wig
is,
comes
yeah, it
off.
is.
I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And to wrap us up on the cast, we've got our first question from an ATRM Patreon supporter.
Oh, nice.
I mentioned the benefits of signing up on Patreon, and this is another one. Ask us a question for the film that we're talking about. We'll answer it right here, right now. And our first one comes from Uriah Young. How you doing, Uriah?
Hello, Uriah.
Hello, you're right.
Uriah asks, if there was a remake of Trading Places, who would you choose to play Billy Ray and Winthorpe? I think we're opening it up as well. We're also going to throw in Ophelia and Duke and Duke into the mix as well for this question.
Okay.
So, Matt, over to you. Who are your picks?
Do you reckon there's going to be any crossovers here? I think it's going to be straight down the line for each of us. I'm not going to predict what they are, but I don't think there's going to be any crossovers.
No, I'd be surprised if you had any of mine.
Yeah.
Okay. You kind of have to play fast and loose with this a bit because you're talking about getting everyone at the right age that were in this film and some aren't going to match up. So
that's all right, Matt. Well, nobody's going to pull you up on that one, Matt.
Billy Ray, the standout choice for me was Donald Glover. I just thought it makes complete sense.
Motherfucker, that's the same as me.
There we go. So, well, honestly, when I thought of Billy Ray, I thought, surely they're not going to pick anyone else. So I'll be interested to see what Luke says. So some crossover.
Right, I'm going to change mine up. I've got to back up.
All right, fair enough. Louis, I've gone Michael Cera. I thought he'd work really well.
Nice.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Okay, Ophelia, Alison Brie, big fan of her. She's very
I
funny.
like Alison Brie a lot.
Alison Brie's brilliant. And then for the Dukes, I've gone Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi.
Oh, wow.
Motherfucker.
Wow. Okay then, Westy.
Hold on, I'm still
Mr. No Crossover.
Yeah, fucking loads of crossover.
Did you have the same for the Dukes? Is that why you went
Well,
motherfucker?
pretty close. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right.
Motherfucker. Moi.
Moi. Daniel Kaluuya, Billy Ray.
Oh, brilliant.
I'll go Ryan Gosling for Winthorpe.
Okay.
Because he can really do that ridiculous comedy.
Yeah,
he's really funny. Yeah,
really zany kind of comedy. Anna de Armas is Ophelia.
Ooh, Jesus Christ. I wonder why.
And for the Dukes, I've got Ian McKellen, but I've got Patrick Stewart.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, that makes
They're
sense.
a classic double act, aren't they?
Excellent.
Fair enough.
Is there any nudity in it?
It just fell off.
All the clues have rotted off.
I've seen everything. That would be great. It would be great as a Duke. But yeah,
that's from extras if anybody doesn't know. Some great choices there, fellas, for certain. Okay. And I'll take Matt's comments. Fast and loose is where I'm at with my choices here.
Yeah.
For Winthorpe, I'm going to go with Hugh Grant. He can pull off that Tuffington thing to a T.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Yeah. And for Billy Ray, I haven't gone for a black actor.
Right.
Okay.
I've gone for, there's too many themes in this script, so we're just going to strip away some of it.
Right.
And I'm going with Zach Galifianakis as a slovenly bum.
Right, okay.
Who can, I think he can scrub up well. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
That's fantastic. Imagine them two. And for Ophelia, I haven't gone for Alison Brie. I haven't gone for Anna de Armas. I've gone for Melissa McCarthy. Now, a different spin. Can you imagine her being kind of like an overweight middle-aged prostitute?
I'm having to now, yes.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I think a different spin on the hooker with the heart of gold motif.
Okay.
And for Randolph and Mortimer, I initially thought Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, which might have been quite nice.
That would be a nice twist, yeah.
But two personal favourites, certainly of recent times, and a lot of limelight on these two fellas recently, Martin Short and Steve Martin. Randolph and Mortimer.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
They're a delicious duo.
Yeah, they'd be great.
Yeah. They would relish that outrageous behaviour of Duke and Duke.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for your question, Uriah. A fitting way to bring our piece on the cast to a close.
Yes.
So 3 great lead performances, not forgetting Bellamy, Amici, Elliott and Gleeson, but in Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis, Trading Places has got some serious talent.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Classic
With a lot to say.
This episode of All the Right Movies is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work and not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself, because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to all ATRM listeners: you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ATRM. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/ATRM. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode of All the Right Movies.
The middle.
In the second act of Trading Places, everything gets spun on its head, starting with Billy Ray being released from jail.
Yeah, released from jail, picked up by the Dukes in the car, and they take him home, and their opinion of him couldn't be clearer. Like, waving that bottle at him. Whiskey! All you want!
As much as you can drink. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Like, he's just some kind of homeless dog on the street they're trying to tempt in with a treat. And, you know, we'll kind of mention them in passing, but I think we do have to say just how good Amici and Bellamy are.
Oh, wonderful.
You know, despicable characters, but and you hate them, but they're so watchable, and it's because of how good, and they've got that old school, classic Hollywood charisma. You would never think to put them in a scene with Eddie Murphy and think, well, that'll work. You'd think, no. Eddie Murphy improvising around those two, that's not going to work. And yet it does, and it works brilliantly.
It totally works. Yeah,
totally works. But underneath that kind of like charisma is the truth of these people, and their true nature is never far from the surface. Like when Billy Ray is in the jacuzzi singing away to himself, and Randolph says, they're very musical people, aren't they? Which,
Jesus Christ.
I mean, fuck me. It's so, but that's the thing, to him, that's not offensive. He thinks he's paying a genuine compliment.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. And
it's outrageous.
It is outrageous, but
it's outrageous, yeah.
But it's the total contrast between the worlds these people come from. You know, we've mentioned that bit that Murphy is improvising when they kind of swap names. Randy, that's like Randy Jackson from the Jackson 5, right? So, yes, I suppose so. Yeah. Good. Yeah, good. Probably has no idea who he's talking about. But, you know, Randolph just goes along with it. Brilliant. But when they bring him home, he meets Coleman for the first time. Perhaps your coat, sir. Yes, this is my coat.
You get a glass, I give you a sip, man.
Well, that's it. Yeah, things he wants to like share the whiskey, not just put it away from. So funny lines, but they've got the dramatic level to them as well. They mean something to the narrative, and it's the same when they're trying to explain to Billy Ray that everything in this house he owns. Yeah. And it's a scene where you think he's either testing them, or it's just the nature of the way he's been brought up. This is his instinct to start putting stuff in his pockets to see how they react. Just moving around the room and just trying to distract them, and he's putting stuff in his jacket pocket.
Look at the curtains.
Pulling the curtains.
It's beautiful the way they got this place set up.
Yeah.
This is my shit.
My shit.
It's my shit.
And it ends with that amazing bit at the end with the vase where it's going like from hand to hand to hand to hand.
Oh. Yeah.
And then he smashes it, but Randolph's happy with that because they can claim on the insurance.
Yeah.
And then Billy says, you want me to break something else? And they'll go, no.
It's really Landis, that. Really Landis. Most Landis bit of the whole film.
It's great. Yeah. When filming that limo scene, Landis was in the tow truck in the front and could hear the dialogue between Bellamy, Amici, and Murphy. Or went something like this. Bellamy says, this is my 99th film, you know, just in between takes, just casual conversation. And Amici says, oh, really? This is my 100th film. And Murphy says, well, fellas, between us, we've done 201 films.
Amazing.
Love that. Yeah, depending on whose account you listen to, the number's slightly different, but that was Landis's take.
Right. Tack sharp, isn't he?
At this point. He is. He's amazing.
So focused, yeah.
Well, I like the scene where Lewis' world crumbles around him. Firstly, this scene in the Heritage Club. That place just absolutely reeks.
Awful.
I think Landis was incredibly forward-thinking. I mentioned his visual storytelling. It's evident here again. That room is stuffed full of middle-aged white America, something that has perpetuated through big business for centuries, for decades. And it's only in recent times that it's kind of been called out. The status quo has been ruffled somewhat, but not in 1983.
No.
And it's generational. You can see it in the portraits on the walls of the members from the Heritage Club of years gone by. The Dukes and Winthorpe are continuing a tradition of history and greed, cruelty and elitism evident throughout the centuries. They're just doing what they've been told or what they've been shown.
And Winthorpe's judged by them paintings at the end.
Yes, he is. Love that.
Yeah.
But that's all going to change once Winthorpe gets a big surprise administered by Clarence Beeks. And it comes as a double shock because, considering he's just been congratulated from his bravery by the speaker, so he's not the type of criminal that Winthorpe had the guts to stand up to yesterday. I think it's an incredibly convoluted way of rooting out the thief. Left hand on the shoulder of the man to your left, right hand in the coat pocket of the man to your right. What the fuck?
Could be anything in there.
Beeks says that one of our operatives witnessed the theft. Well, just point the finger at Winthorpe immediately and forget about this charade. I don't know what's going on here.
It's really contrived.
It really is.
It makes no sense. He's not going to steal $150, is he?
No.
And in a wonderful contrast to that scene, when Lewis is in the police station, everyone around him is black. Again, Landis reinforcing this kind of societal disparity. I really, really like that.
Right, so here's a fact for you. Winthorpe's prison number, when his mugshot is taken, is 747450 That's the same number that Jake Blues has in the Blues Brothers.
Fantastic.
Wow. Love that.
Classic Landis.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go for Billy Ray. Goes back to the bar with his measly $27. And that bar that looks like my heaven. I love that place.
Snap.
Just Xmas written on the mirror. That's enough for Christmas. Nothing else needed. Lovely. Would they have champagne? I don't think they would. That kind of place. Just crack out the champagne. He's obviously had that for years and nobody's opened it. But I just think it's just great dialogue here. He's just so fast paced. And when he's talking to the ladies who are like on his arms, he's like, I'm a sexy man. I'm a sexy man. And he's like, he
so good.
Later on, he's like, I'm a peaceful man. Just really bigging himself up.
I love that when he says champagne for everybody, courtesy of Billy Ray Valentine. A toast to Billy Ray.
Yeah, he's just like so self-congratulatory.
It's fantastic.
And he loves the fact that he's been given this situation. But then you see how quickly that he could be taken advantage of. And he's never had possessions before, I don't think. Anything that he can actually call his own, that he's proud of. And I think that's a really great twist to the character. Again, getting back to what we're talking about with Landis, about how he kind of disguises all these serious things with comedy on top of it. But it's one of the greatest improv lines by Murphy is in this scene when he gets back to the house and he's like, who's putting out the cools on my floor? He's like, I've got to write that in.
Great.
And I didn't know what cools were, and I've looked it up.
No, I didn't.
Menthol cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, okay, fair enough. Apparently they said that was racist towards black people because black people smoke cools, right? But he's fine with the blackface. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But apparently, we're like, take that out. That's a little bit too far. But I think that's really great when he's like, it's a Persian rug.
It's from Persia. I love that.
It's just wonderful. But then we get another topless scene, which I don't know if this is relevant or this works at all.
It doesn't.
And I think this bit is where it gets quite convoluted and a little bit crossed with what Landis is trying to say.
Yeah.
And he loses track of it here a little bit. It kind of unravels a little bit.
I think he lets it delve down a little bit because he's got some weighty material. He's got some big things to say, but then he's got these scenes. Yeah. We don't need this.
No, I don't think we need the back to the house scene. I think it could have cut when he's like, come back to mine. And then the next morning could have been like, this place is trashed. I'm not doing that again. I don't think we need to see the party.
No.
Because none of the characters, apart from the guys who are in prison, fair enough, there's a lovely callback there.
Yeah.
When he's just like, my limousine's actually outside.
Great writing. That's a great beat.
That's great writing and a really good callback. But I think everything in the bar works.
Yes.
And it really works.
I agree.
And it's done and it's finished.
So Billy Ray is adapting to his new life and Lewis is looking at 3 to 5 mandatory. My, how the tables have turned.
Indeed.
Lewis gets a temporary reprieve when Penelope gets him out of jail, but it doesn't last long, and it sets in motion the contrasting fortunes of our lead characters.
It does.
First off, we're back with Winthorpe, who is released from jail, and we can see how much of a terrible time he's had on account of his black eye and bloodied lip. Penelope doesn't belong in this environment, certainly when that huge gorilla bloke is trying it on, talking about her purse. Is that your purse? That's a nice voice.
She's amazing as well. She's like in this and Manhunter, and that's it.
Yeah, she's great.
She's wonderful in Manhunter as well.
I love it when Lewis first comes out and sees Penelope. He's so, darling, he's full of himself, so pompous, and he's dressed up in this ridiculous outfit, which has probably been taken off some incarcerated hobo, and his hair is all over the place. And he comes out spouting, the good news is, I'm innocent. I haven't done anything vaguely resembling this. Really, it's the truth. What a prick.
So entitled.
So entitled. Real life hasn't hit him yet, and the man who Penelope loves is kind of still there, so he gets a stay of execution, but it's fleeting because Beeks is up to his old tricks, and this is the moment that we're introduced to Ophelia, who will do all the things Louis likes just for a dime bag. No wonder Penelope Scarpa is never to be seen again. Jesus Christ, she's never seen anything like this before in her life.
No.
And here you've got the makings of a beautiful relationship. They may be a slightly unlikely pair.
Yeah.
From two different sides of the tracks, but they work well off each other. Lewis thinks he's well above Ophelia's level at the start. He's hustling you, and then he brings out
that was really good.
His wallet. You don't think you give these to just anybody. What a prick. But he soon comes back down to earth with a bump. And I love that Ophelia is smart. She's not buying any of Louis' shit.
No.
And at each turn, at his house, at the bank, when Louis keeps on getting thwarted, Ophelia isn't surprised because she's seen this coming a mile away. She's seen this all her life. And it ends with Louis literally on his knees begging for help. I bet he didn't anticipate that at the start of the day.
No, definitely not.
Great. And I totally buy Winthorpe's slippery slope here and Ophelia's eyeing a way to make money and fast-track her retirement plans. I really like all the beats here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that all contrasts really well to how Billy Ray's day is going, which is going really well for him. And then we see his first day at work, and, you know, let's be honest, this explanation of what the Dukes do, it's not for Billy Ray's benefit. It's for us as well.
Us. Of course
it's definitely for us, because, yes, I know what commodities are, but a commodities broker, not a clue what they do, how they do it, why they end up with so much money. And by the end of it, I'm still none the wiser as to why this system exists and how it's something you can make so much money out of. So, if anything, it sounds like an absolutely ridiculous way to make money, which I guess is the point the film is making. You know, how can you get so rich on doing seemingly so little?
Yeah.
But as usual, the Duke's just so patronising to Billy Ray, explaining what commodities are and pointing out the examples on the table in front of him, what you might find in a bacon, lettuce and tomato sandwich. And then you get that look to camera.
Look to camera is beautiful.
It is a thing of beauty. I mean, mentioned it before, but it's such a risky move to do that, to break the fourth wall.
Twice.
He's basically going, yes, these guys are pricks. I agree. But the thing is, they don't need to be that patronising to him, because he gets it, like I said, when talking about just Murphy's performance in general. Billy Ray is smart. You know, he gets to the heart of the matter. Sounds like you guys were a couple of bookies.
Love that line.
Yeah, so he understands what to do. He just needs to get it on his terminology, his level of the life that he's lived, like how he works out later on. No, this is when you start selling the pork bellies because people are getting anxious over Christmas dinner. It's all about that fourth wall break in this scene, but it's just so well done. It's so memorable.
Yeah, it is.
So then we get Winthorpe going back to Ophelia's, and we find out that she actually has got brains as well as beauty.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. I think it's just a really strong character, a really strong performance from Jamie Lee Curtis. And a lot of people are going to be talking about a certain point of this scene, which is fine. That's absolutely fine. And it's very 1983. I think she is challenging this guy. She's challenging Winthorpe a little bit with her body and see how he would react and whether he would pounce on it or move back from it, or whether that's something that, because that's how she sells herself. And then she says, this is what I've got. This is my commodity. And she hides it from him, closes the door and says, you have to sleep somewhere else. You're not part of this. You have to earn this. You have to earn who I am. That's, you know, food, rent. That's not the only things that cost money. She costs money. She's got respect for herself, which I think is really important for the character. And it's really important for us going forward, because she does save his life. There's her and Denham Elliott's character, and they actually cough up the money and say, without them guys, there would be nothing. So she's got a head on her shoulders. She knows what she's doing. This is just a means to an end. Once she takes that wig off, she's just a completely different person. It's like she's disguising herself within that personality. She's in charge. I'm happy that she's in charge. And it really works for me. It really shines. This whole scene's great. I love that See You Next Wednesday poster in the background. Really Landis. And you're like, oh, this is a John Landis film.
It's a notorious scene for one reason, really, but...
Yeah, missing the point, though.
Yeah, beyond that, the point has been missed, absolutely. And that See You Next Wednesday poster, like you mentioned, Westy, it's a classic in-joke from Landis.
It is.
a fake film. It's a poster which you can see in most Landis works, including Schlock, The Blues Brothers, American Werewolf, Coming to America. It's a line taken from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
The final line on that video call, with his daughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we talked about that at length on our American Werewolf in London
Yes.
classic
that's on there.
podcast. So if you want to listen to that, sign up. You will not be disappointed.
Definitely not.
Carry on. So some very memorable scenes for more ways than one in the second act of Trading Places.
The crew.
As is often the case on a movie set, the crew are the unsung heroes. First on our crew list are a screenwriting duo with one credit to their name at this point, the incredibly badly received Cheaper to Keep Her from 1981.
Okay.
Right.
But they made a jump up in class and quality with Trading Places. Matt, what do you think of the screenplay by Timothy Harris and Herschel Weingrod here?
It's one I find difficult to know where to come down on it, because on one hand, it's definitely smarter than it looks on the surface, smarter than a lot of 80s comedies, but I also don't think it's as clever as it thinks it is, and I think there's some mixed messaging going on here.
Okay.
On the one hand, it does have this seriousness at the heart of it. It addresses economic inequality and racism, class, privilege, and all that's really good. But on the other hand, I think it just doesn't address them enough, or it addresses them in the wrong way. So on the surface, it looks like it's a film that's attacking like the super rich, as shown in The Dukes. But it only attacks them. It doesn't really attack the system. By the end of the film, the Dukes have been bankrupted by Billy Ray and Louis, but Louis is back in his elevated position in society, and Billy Ray and Ophelia are rich now as well. So I don't know what the film is trying to say in that. You know, capitalism is okay as long as the right people get rewarded.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fix the inequality at the heart of the film. People like Billy Ray are still out on the streets. They just don't have someone like Louis to help them and make them a load of money in the process. And I think Louis in particular is quite a confused character. Like, he doesn't have this revelation that all this shameless greed is abhorrent and he's been wasting his life in pursuit of it. He only wants to bring the Dukes down because they try to ruin his life.
Yes.
He doesn't have an epiphany about any of this. He doesn't learn anything. The system itself doesn't get critiqued by him, and that's fine to a degree, but I think the film just thinks it's a bit smarter than it actually is and a bit more satirical than it actually is. And I think it would have been more interesting to me if it had been Louis that had overheard the Dukes using that racist language about Billy Ray, and that's what spurred him on to reflect on what kind of system he's been spending his life in, but they don't go that way. And I feel like the film, it is partly inspired, I think, by the lesson that Scrooge learns in A Christmas Carol, or George Bailey learns in It's a Wonderful Life, where the lesson is money isn't important, people are, but I don't think they've quite understood that lesson.
Yeah.
And I just think if this had been in the hands of someone like Frank Capra or someone like Billy Wilder, because it does have these nods to classic Hollywood,
It does.
I think it would have absolutely nailed those elements. Whereas I think trying to address that stuff, it just falls a little short.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all, Matt. Yeah, there's some mixed messaging. Landis seems to be very aware of racial inequality and the absurdity of the perceived white elite in Duke and Duke, but he's happy to have Aykroyd do a blackface bit, which seems a little strange. Like, we've talked, those messages really hammered home, but then he's got naked women in a lot of scenes, which kind of dumbs down his argument, really.
Yeah.
What I'm struck about in the writing, when every time I watch this comedy, is the narrative beats and the comments on society. It's a weighty subject for a comedy, but on top of all of that, they also add in more complexity to it by setting it in a world which is alien to the majority of cinema goers, the stock market. Can you imagine a film like this being pitched today? It's a ridiculously high concept for a comedy, and it just wouldn't get past the pitch. There's no way it's being remade today, this film.
No.
I think it's to the writer's credit that they don't get bogged down in the detail of the stock market. There are a few exposition scenes peppered throughout that give us just enough information to keep us on side. Like you said, Matt, that scene with Billy Ray, when he's in the office on his first day, it's Billy Ray being shown the ropes. He's basically the audience.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because we need to know all of this. And it's the same when they get to the trading floor in New York. Winthorpe's doing that voiceover for Billy Ray. It's for us.
Yeah.
I think with the writing, you've got to be able to let a few wild swings go in the narrative. Billy Ray isn't stupid. And you've mentioned it, Matt. He protests and he thinks the Dukes are up to something fishy. He goes from abject poverty to privilege. And he takes to it like a duck to water. All of a sudden, that very day, he's complaining about coasters. It's a shortcut. It takes a shortcut.
It does, yeah.
I do think that Lewis's arc is more believable than Billy Ray's. When we fall hard, and it's easier to drop than climb. Lewis does that spectacularly, and I think the writing does nail that bit. But I don't think it's perfect. You've mentioned a few things there, Matt. There are a few other things coming up. It maybe tries to cram in too much for a comedy for me, for any genre for that matter, and maybe comes a little unstuck in the final third again. We'll be talking about that in a moment.
Oh, yeah.
But I do like the ambition for an 80s comedy. I love the ambition that this has, and it's stuffed full of things that it wants to say and loads of great narrative beats. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both you fellas, as always. But I just feel like this was written with Winthorpe in mind.
All right.
And I think they didn't plan on Murphy being so fucking good and didn't plan on that part being so kind of electric on the screen, and they maybe need to give him a little bit more. It's hard to differentiate between what was written down and what was ad-libbed over the top. So, I mean, to read the script, I feel like it would be very bare bones. But then you start putting these actors in these roles, and they grow out of the roles. This film is a director's film. It's an actor's film. I don't think it's down to the writing at all. The plot is secondary to the performances. It's all secondary to what they're trying to say, and they've used it as a bare bones kind of blueprint. The writing to me feels like a skeleton.
Okay.
It feels like the concept's there, and these guys arrive and then deliver what they want on top of the concept. It is secondary to what Landis brings to it, what Murphy brings to it, what Aykroyd brings to it, what Lee Curtis brings to it. It's just the idea for me in the writing that works, and they completely elaborate on that.
The co-writer, Timothy Harris, came up with the initial premise when he was playing tennis. He used to play, for some reason, with two doctors who were brothers, and they had a terrible case of sibling rivalry, which laid the seed for Duke and Duke. He pitched the idea of two brothers arguing over nature versus nurture to his writing partner, Herschel Weingrod, who loved the idea, obviously.
And the criminal side of Trading Places was inspired by Harris's environment. He said, "At the time, I was living in what was a fairly rundown part of LA that was completely crime-ridden. I lived in an apartment complex where everybody either had a gun held to their head or had been raped."
Jesus Christ, that's miserable.
Yeah.
Sounds like they should have wrote Taxi Driver instead of that.
No, hardly the inspiration for a knockabout comedy.
No. Exactly, yeah. I'm having a terrible time Trading Places. Makes no sense. Research for the film involved Weingrod hanging out with real traders in LA. And they were 3 hours behind New York time zone wise, which meant they were pissed early in the day because happy hour was a lot earlier for those guys.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You've got to fit in with them, haven't you? Weingrod and Harris researched the commodities market extensively, and I think that comes across in the film. Weingrod said the Russians tried to corner the wheat market and the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market, but pork bellies and frozen orange juice are much more funny, and most Americans didn't have a clue that such things were publicly traded and in a really dire situation could actually be delivered to your doorstep.
Nice.
Cleasney knows about its subject.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And Harris said the choice to film in Philly was because it had a connection with the founding of the country, the Constitution, everyone being entitled to the pursuit of happiness, all the idealism. It's all built into America.
Yeah, that comes across in the visuals very much.
Does, yeah.
And the basic premise of the story takes inspiration from a few sources, most notably Mark Twain's classic story, The Prince and the Pauper, in which those two characters who closely resemble each other swap lives. And Twain also had a short story, The £1 Million Banknote, and that involved two brothers who bet on the outcome of giving a poor man the titular unusable tender, and that was actually adapted for the screen in the 1954 film Man with a Million, starring Gregory Peck.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Less directly, the film takes a lot of inspiration from a couple of other sources as well. The Three Stooges film Hoi Polloi, and also an episode of The Twilight Zone from the very first season called A Nice Place to Visit. So it is taking a lot of inspiration from a lot of different sources, never actually being confirmed by the writers that that's where they took their inspiration from, but I think it's clear to see, particularly The Prince and the Pauper and that £1 Million banknote as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aykroyd said that the two writers wrote the screenplay on fax machines. He said one of them was in Michigan and the other one was in Los Angeles, and they created pages by sending them back and forth, which is a strange way of collaborating.
Yeah.
So despite being in different states, Weingrod and Harris wrote a screenplay. While not perfect, it's got a lot going for it, not to mention some wonderful comic dialogue and situations.
Yeah.
Back on familiar territory for the Trading Places score. 2 episodes ago, we talked about Albert Bernstein's iconic work on The Great Escape. Then Unbelievable. Here he is popping up in an 80s comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Huge range, multi-talented. The fact that the music is largely classic pieces, I mean, it just adds to the pomposity of the world that we're peering into.
It does. It's very elitist in the scores.
It is.
isn't
Oh,
it?
without doubt. It's Mozart for the stuffy upper classes who think they're a cut above. And it's Do You Want to Funk by Sylvester at Billy Ray's party.
Yeah.
Do you want
Brilliant.
to funk? Love that.
That contrast itself, that music that's thumping away, surrounded by this opulence at the Duke owned home. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And Bernstein has made a habit of this in the 80s when he switched to comedy. Huge pieces of music, orchestral, regal, serious, which works wonders in direct contrast to the comedy on screen, just like he did with Animal House and Ghostbusters. I think some of the best comedies have adapted this approach, and I think we've got Bernstein to thank for that trend.
Mm-hmm.
The grandiosity in the music adds a sense of history to the architecture that we see on screen of Philly. Works hand in hand with the visuals. It highlights an almost inbuilt kind of pre-established etiquette. We don't need to be shown what's going on in these buildings. We already know because of the music. I think that's a great choice from Bernstein, who's already collaborated with Landis on Animal House, Blues Brothers, American Werewolf in London. He's obviously his go-to guy. He gave him a second life as a comedy movie scorer.
Yeah.
And I love the little cues that come in for the Dukes when they're plotting their evil machinations. It underpins the scene when they come up with the wage after Billy Ray's been arrested. Just lovely little delicious cues here and there, on top of all these huge classical pieces, which have a lot of reverence. I love that. I love the contrast. Westy, what do you think of the music in the film?
I mean, it is what it is. I think the mix, now I'm watching it, is really, really difficult because the music is so loud in the mix.
Oh, it is.
And
Yeah, it's
the
a presence.
dialogue is so low. I don't know. I think it takes itself a little bit too seriously. It seems just too obvious. There's nothing in there where you're like, oh, that's the theme from Trading Places. This kind of classical look at things isn't welcome. There's a future now. People are looking at things differently. This doesn't stick. They're like looking at the paintings. I think it's the same with the music. It just has this very stuck in its ways, very much like overpowering, overbearing scent to it. For me, it just feels like it's slamming the point home a little bit too hard.
Yeah. It's definitely doubling down on its stance.
It's like, this is what we are. The film sounds like an oil painting. And it looks like an oil painting in certain places. But it sounds like you're walking through a gallery. It's great. I would never have said it was Elmer Bernstein in a million years if I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It doesn't feel like that at all. And it's all very heavy-handed. It's all a big punch in the face, which is great if you watch it in the cinema. But watching it at home, it's a little bit too much.
Okay, right. Controversial views. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I don't think it's done any favours us doing Great Escape like one episode ago, Luke, because
Yeah, I mean, that score is outrageous.
exactly. I mean, that score is just incredibly memorable, and this one just isn't really. It's fine for what it is. It accentuates themes, but when it's mainly the kind of classical reference which he's borrowed from somewhere else and he's just playing on that, it just feels it's probably a bit easy for him and a bit obvious, like Westy's saying, to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. It is very obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's just really obvious. You know, a couple of decent songs in there. Do You Want to Funk? Can't deny I've enjoyed the odd bop to the Locomotion over the years at the old school disco. Of course not. Not going to deny that.
Over the years.
Over the years. Yeah, overall, I'm just not going to get excited about the score for Trading Places, really.
Whatever.
He's disappointed with that. Well, what do you expect?
Yeah, but I mean, we've been alluding to the classical influence and the music in the opening titles. That's The Marriage of Figaro by Mozart. And the importance of that is that opera has a subplot where the servant is scheming to expose his employer.
Yes. When Lewis is on his way to work, he whistles C'est vol balayer from the opera itself. In that piece, Figaro says he'll overthrow the machinery, which obviously is thematically relevant at the end of the film.
It's really deep, this film. Like, it's outrageous.
Yeah. So one of the legends of movie music, doing good work in some people's eyes, not great work in others.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Finally, we're talking about a man who flew under the radar but was John Landis's go-to DP, shooting 5 of his most important films, not to mention the groundbreaking music video for Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Thriller, yeah.
Westy, what do you think of Robert Painter as cinematographer here?
The big painter. He paints
painter.
picture.
He
Painter
certainly
by
does.
name, painter by nature. Wonderful. I think this looks very 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that vibe to it. There's not a lot of moving camera. It's all very static. It's framed beautifully. When he cuts to the paintings, you're almost confused, thinking that could have been a shot of the guys just sat there.
Yeah, definitely.
The lighting's the same. It's the same kind of vibe. I think he just looked at them paintings and went, I'm going to make the whole film look like that, which is incredible. It looks great, and it doesn't distract you at all. It doesn't pull you out of this film whatsoever.
No.
Everything is just so beautifully kind of framed and set up, and it's very static. It's very back and forth. He knows what is in front of the camera as opposed to behind it. He knows exactly what he's shooting, and he makes sure that everything's in the frame and everyone gets the place. And he does it really, really well. I think it's a really good-looking film. It stands up, and it's a 70s film in 1983 that looks better than any other real 70s film. For me, it's like, it's up there with French Connection if you're going to look at like a 70s film. Like the vibe of
it looks great.
It's up there, and it looks fantastic. So for me, he did a great job.
Main thing that stands out for me is doesn't look like a comedy.
Yeah,
Certainly not an 80s comedy. It's got a different aesthetic. All the location shooting, that's excellent. You can like feel the cold at times, which he brings out. The depth of some of the shot compositions, it does feel like it's being shot more like a Wall Street drama than a comedy, and that's absolutely what Landis wanted to do. I mean, it's not the kind of cinematography for me that kind of shouts out loud and draws attention to itself.
No.
It tells a story.
Yeah, it tells a story. It's not the kind of thing where you're going to get 100 different screen grabs to put as your screensaver in the background. It's not that type of film, but for what it is, it does the job very, very well indeed.
Yeah, I think it's the cinematography, which is one of the elements that elevates this film beyond being a mere cheeky 80s comedy. It's clear that the city is a major part of the film, looming down at those who inhabit it. Painter clearly reveres Philadelphia, and I think that really comes across in the shot choices. Like you said, Matt, turn that volume down, minus a few scenes. This looks like a really serious piece of work. It's in the architecture in the city, showing Philadelphia's rich history. Like that shot of Billy Ray coming out of the elevator and Lewis at the end of that long, cold marble corridor. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
As is the exterior shot of Lewis outside just after that. The architecture of the city is stunning and in direct contrast to the stinking mess that is Lewis Winthorpe III in that dirty old Santa suit.
Yeah, the cut from like a close to a wide is fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Like when he's in the bath and he's like, we used to have a fart in the tub. But it's like the close up, and then you've got that wide, and it's like you see everything.
Great.
It's so good.
And then, there's contrasts all over the place. One look at the street where Ophelia lives tell you that society has her in the same position as Billy Ray. Which seems like 1,000 miles away from the world of Duke and Duke, but they inhabit the same city. Again, it really kind of hammers home Landis's message and reinforces everything about that. So I think there's a wonderful harmony in the visuals, the music and the writing as well. I think they're all on the same team, elevating each other as a result to hit Landis's tune.
Yeah.
The end.
The final act brings with it the fall before the rise, starting with Lewis reaching rock bottom. Westy, it's over to you.
Until Bad Santa, has anyone looked as disgusting as Aykroyd does as Santa here? It's absolutely lifting, isn't it?
That's
You
the
can
dirtiest
smell
weed
him.
in the world.
Disgusting. And it's just the greyness of all of it.
It's
supposed to be
grey.
pure white.
Why is it grey?
Why is it grey? Where's he been before this? It's just outrageous. And just the way he's stuffing everything into his pockets. He's just cutting slabs of meat off. He's
Slugging
just
drinks.
Down drinks, absolutely off his face. It's just ludicrous, and you feel so sorry for the guy at this point. But at the same time, you're kind of laughing, which is the Landis for me in this whole situation, is how he makes, again, what we've talked about, the comedy and the serious nature. This guy is fucked. He's done. He's done for. His life is over with.
Yes, he is.
And he's stealing food and putting it in his pockets and still trying to then frame Billy Ray in the middle of it. It's just... It's so funny, but at the same time, it's so heartbreaking. Because, I've had this is a 7-year-old be like, oh, yeah, okay, fair enough. There he is, Santa. All right, yeah, it's funny. But now I'm like, Jesus Christ, I understand this guy's plight.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get into the comedy element of it. And I think that's what Landis was trying to do, is say, like, look, it is funny, but is it? Can you laugh at these people? And getting back to the writing, when he talks to Billy Ray, and he's like, if that's not the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
And
I
Billy
picked
Ray's
that up,
reaction is he wipes it off, and he's like, doesn't respond to it, doesn't react to it. I've spoken about it before, but when he runs out with that gun and he's screaming,
Jesus, that's terrifying.
It's terrifying, but he's got real control over the room, and that's all he wants is respect from people and control. And the way that Valentine changes and says, you don't need to be soft on these people. He's got money to buy drugs.
Yeah.
And you see that kind of twist, and you think, please don't go there. And he doesn't, and it's great. Brilliant from Murphy, because he's just playing to the Duke's hands, and he knows what they want to hear. And you don't know that he's doing that until he pockets that joint. Because you're kind of, he's been won over now. He's been won over. He's in the Duke's pocket. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's like, don't be soft on these people who throw them. Okay, yeah. And then pockets the joint.
He's playing up for the cameras, isn't he?
He's still Billy Ray.
Yeah.
He's still there in spirit. And that works for me. And this is the scene that changes everything.
Yeah, I love it when he's planting all of those, just dumping shitloads of drugs into his...
I found him!
Marijuana, Quaaludes, yellow ones, red ones, cocaine grinder. He's the pusher, not me.
Not me.
When he pulls out that beef instead of the gun, that's insane.
Oh, God, when he cuts the beef off and starts putting it in his pockets, like that salmon, when it goes into his shirt, and it's just all the beard on it, and it's just, oh, God.
Oh. You'll all be very, very sorry.
Very, very sorry. It's hilarious, that bit. It's hilarious.
And I do love the end of that scene when Billy Ray sneaks the joint in his pocket. And
great.
it sets the following scene up very nicely.
Yeah.
A shocking scene for certain, but a pivotal one for the plot. And hardly surprising considering the Duke's disdain for the lower classes and their behaviour towards Lewis. Billy Ray's catching a sneaky joint in the toilet, and the Dukes walk in, congratulating themselves on a job well done.
Amazing where he doesn't know where to blow the smoke.
Yeah. Brilliant. The Dukes have elevated Billy Ray's social status. He's adept in his role, and they've turned Lewis to crime. Sounds like the perfect way to win $1. I mean, these guys, unscrupulous, incorrigible, down and dirty bastards, they don't care who they leave in their wake.
Yeah, the worst.
Horrific. And then comes that language from Mortimer. Shocking to hear now. Probably less so in the 80s, but it's a tough pill to swallow. But I'm guessing not uncommon from the mouths of people in these positions with wealth and power in the 80s. And dare I say it, maybe not uncommon even now.
Yep.
No, exactly. And in that kind of environment as well, where you think you're safe, where you've locked the door and you're in the bathroom, I guess, you get that, you can say what you want. It's got that RoboCop kind of vibe to it as well, where it's like all the secrets come out in the bathroom.
It does. I mean, the message may be muddled, Matt. We've talked about it in the writing, but I think it is a smart script, and I think it's a brave thing for Landis to do this in a comedy. I must say, Bellamy, and particularly Amici, are magnificent in this film.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
They completely embody the evil hidden in a racist upper-class society like
they
this.
know what they're doing, and that's important.
It's magnificent.
They know that they are assholes.
Yeah.
They definitely know that.
And Billy Ray's suspicions come to fruition here. He's known all along that something is up, and this is his evidence. That physical comedy when he has no other alternative but to put the joint in his mouth. I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Could it have gone in the toilet? I would imagine so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. How did the Dukes not smell that joint already? We'll put that down to their age.
It would have been very potent.
Yes, it would have.
Yeah.
And the final thing to say here for me is another piece of visual storytelling. The Dukes wash their hands in the bathroom, washing their evil scheming clean. It's a very nice touch.
Yeah.
Nice visual.
Yeah, and then we pick up again with Louis getting on the bus, just reduced to just grunting at people. He can't even be bothered to communicate, which I think is particularly effective because so much of the film he's been in love with the sound of his own voice. And now that's gone. That like
good.
patrician, rich, privileged voice is just gone, and he's just at people now.
There's no one to listen to him anymore.
No one's listening to him. So he's absolutely at his lowest. And to say he's dishevelled by this point is underselling it a bit. I mean,
that's massively underselling.
Oh,
massive. I mean, you mentioned it, but
let's say fucked.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, you said, but I've never seen a beard just so manky and dirty and matted.
How was it that colour?
Pale,
sick, baked
disgusting.
into it. And when he takes a bite of that salmon, like Aykroyd really sells that, and I think he takes a bite that is more beard than salmon, to be honest. But what a thing to eat when you're drunk as a lord. Like,
Cider salmon.
Don't think so.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
from pulling that beard through his teeth.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because you can feel it, that horrible feeling
Yeah.
of fabric against your teeth. It's horrible. And when he gets on the bus, that is a proper drunken sit down. He does. Like when you stand
plonk,
steady,
isn't it?
just plonking down there. And I think that's a young Edie Falco sitting opposite him, isn't it? Like one of her
is,
first
yeah.
roles.
Yes,
yeah,
it
which
is, yes.
I kind of hadn't clocked until now.
Yeah, very
But then
good.
it's just the litany of misfortune continues from the dog literally pisses on him. Then it starts pissing down with rain. And that great shot where, would you say this is breaking the fourth wall? Because he's looking straight into the camera when he's putting the
Yeah.
gun to his head.
He's doing a Jonathan Demme frame.
It is a Demi kind of move. It is a
Yeah.
very much like a not It's a Wonderful Life as well, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great.
His luck is so out at this point that the gun won't even go off until he throws it away.
I
which
love
I think that's a really
That's
great
so
gag.
funny.
Yeah, you can't even get a break that way. But the way it ends when he gets back to Ophelia, I'm going to pick up what Westy said there because I think there's another It's a Wonderful Life reference here because to me it's very reminiscent when George Bailey comes home on that Christmas Eve, totally despondent, but Mary Bailey is trimming the tree, completely oblivious, and it's the same as what Ophelia's doing here.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I think it references another Christmas film is The Apartment because the suicide attempt, it's what Fran does. In the apartment, she tries to take an overdose of pills and gets rescued. So, again, it's one of those things where you go through what's happening and you think, fucking hell, this is dark. This is serious stuff.
It's really dark.
Yeah.
Really dark, but it's
But
done
it's
with,
funny.
but it's funny. It's just done with
is.
that likeness, a touch to make it funny.
Yeah.
After everything, like his horrific plan to set Billy Ray up hasn't worked. I mean, when would it ever? Dressed the way he does, and then he tries to kill himself. That doesn't work. He gets pissed on by a dog, and then. And the drugs that he bought to set Billy Ray up, which have failed, he uses them to OD and kill himself. I mean, it's so tragic. It's
It is
unbelievable.
outrageous.
So with all the cards on the table, our unlikely dream team club together to take the Dukes down. Eggnog. Now we're getting down to business and boarding a train where there are a number of strange things going on.
Yes, they are.
Matt, can you make sense of any of this?
John Landis can't make sense of any of this. So they've got the plan. They want to get the briefcase off Beaks. Okay, fine. This should be such like a classy heist move.
Yeah.
And it's anything but.
It's
And once they get on that
Like
train.
strangers on the train or something. It should
Yeah,
be
yeah,
Hitchcock.
something like
It's-
that. Something like that. And this is where the film really starts to fall down for me. Everything has been really grounded up until now. It's
Yes.
we've been saying this is intelligent filmmaking for comedy. This is an intelligent script. It's one of the most realistic, in kind of quotation marks, comedies of the time. And like I said about Landis, this is his most mature film. But then you get to this point.
Up until now.
Up until now. And it's like the other John Landis comes in, the childish John Landis. And it's like Landis has said to Aykroyd and Murphy, okay, you can have this one scene, guys. You can do what you want in this scene because I've got all the rest.
It's insane.
But it doesn't fit with the rest of it at all. And the whole sequence, it just comes across like some extended SNL skit from back in the day.
Yeah,
Totally.
it definitely does. Yeah, 100%.
Everyone is just playing dress up. Everyone's playing a different character and none of it's believable. Like, where would Louis get these performance skills from? Like, it's just so out of character.
know.
Where would they get the costumes? Where would Coleman get this drunken Irish priest act from? None of it's realistic. There's no way to think that this would plausibly work on Biggs, who knows them anyway.
Yeah,
And-
I think
exactly.
they're trying to be offensive to almost every race.
yeah.
There's something here that's offensive to everyone, pretty much.
I mean, what is that gorilla doing being transported from DC to Philly by train?
That's
That's
even worse.
awful. The bit with the
What on
gorilla.
earth is that?
Yeah.
Who signed off on that?
Exactly. And mistaken Beaks for an actual gorilla. I mean, come on.
Mental.
It's just so silly.
Belushi's in there.
It Belushi's
makes no
in there.
sense.
None of it makes
It turns
sense.
into Animal House for
Yeah,
about
it
27
is, it does.
minutes.
Yeah. It's like they've spliced Animal House into the end, and none of it is judged well at all. It's like when the teacher goes out the classroom and all the kids
Yeah,
start
it is.
misbehaving.
It's exactly the same as that. Yeah,
That's what it's
put
like.
the telly in. Let's
Yeah.
just watch that. Yeah,
Yeah. So it just sends the film into a tailspin from here on in for me, and it doesn't really recover at any point.
Right, that's a shame. I mean, I totally agree with you. Absurd characters, abstract comedy, funny costumes, caricature accents.
Yeah.
The tone is a complete departure from the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Al Franken and Tom Davis play the stoner baggage handlers in this scene, and they're great as well. Really, really funny.
Yeah.
They're part of Saturday Night Live, as we've been talking about, but they weren't first choice. Second City TV characters, the Mackenzie brothers, played by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas. They were first picked by Landis, but scheduling conflicts means they couldn't do it.
No.
Well, they would have been great.
Yeah.
I love Moranis in there.
Yeah, it would have been great.
Really funny.
Moranis and Thomas would go on to play the Mackenzie brothers in the 1983 film Strange Brew. And
Right.
Al Franken later became Senator Franken.
He did.
Because of his political position, his financial records were of public interest. So he still gets paid royalties for playing this part in Trading Places.
Oh, really?
Which is nice. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Before Paul Gleason came on board for the role of, obviously, Clarence Beeks, unbelievably, Gordon Liddy was being tapped up for the role. Now, if you don't know who that is, he was one of the main antagonists in the Watergate scandal.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, why don't I know the name?
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. Imagine that.
What?
Unbelievable. He had no acting experience whatsoever, but he'd recently been released from prison for the Watergate incident and was riding high after the success of his autobiography. He was interested in the role, but then tapped out when he saw how it turned out for Clarence.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone would be.
Yeah. He didn't really go over on the whole sexual assault thing.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
No, disgusting.
Because he's great. He's a great character up to that point. I don't understand the end of this film at all.
Nope.
It's a maze.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
weird.
Yeah, I mean, and there's something here, and I think it just sums up this whole mess that it becomes at this point, because
Chaos.
Curtis, she's dressed in lederhosen, but has a Swedish accent, and that was part improvisation, part necessity. She couldn't do the Austrian accent, so Landis just went with her being Swedish and tweaked the screenplay accordingly.
Absolute pandemonium.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Landis wasn't there. Let's be honest. He wasn't there.
And obviously, we're dancing around it, but this scene is the cause of much controversy, which intensifies with each passing year.
Yeah.
Detractors argue that the scene pushes the absurdity to breaking point, taking you out of the film. How could someone from Lewis's background be able to carry out this stereotype considering his perceived ignorance to any class, creed, or race other than his own? I'm sure others would argue that it's the absurdity which is the scene's saviour, which of course brings us to our final Patreon question. This one is from Thomas Cole. Hi, Thomas.
Hi,
Hello,
Thomas.
Thomas.
Thomas says, I watched this last night and completely forgotten about Dan Aykroyd doing blackface in the train scene. Do you think this is an impact on how the film might be viewed going forward? Matt, it's a cultural and racial hot potato.
Certainly is.
Catch.
Thanks.
Burn your fingers, man.
Yeah. Look, first thing to be said, and I think everybody already knows this, but I think we have to say it at the start. No one is suggesting for me that Landis or Aykroyd are racist as people. No one's suggesting that.
No.
But it's a judgment call. And blackface unequivocally is racist. And the question, therefore, has to be, well, why is it in there? What purpose does it serve the narrative? Was there really no other way of Louis disguising himself here?
Yes.
And smearing what I guess is boot polish they use, I don't know, it's what it looks like. Just smearing that over your face does not in any way, shape or form make you look anything like a black person. I mean, it's ridiculous to think so. And as I've said, this whole sequence is the worst sequence in the film, and this is the worst part of it. The only comparison in recent years to make is Tropic Thunder, because that has Robert Downey Jr. in blackface. Now, is that okay? I mean, like I say, it's such a hot potato, I don't know. But the argument that film makes is that Downey Jr.'s character is so pretentious as an actor that he thinks it's okay to go that method and dies.
Yeah, it works in that film.
It works in that film because he gets called out for it.
Yeah.
He gets called out for being pretentious and offensive. Louis doesn't at this point. Everyone just thinks, yeah, it's okay to go along with this. So, yes, there's no malice meant here, but I just think it's such a bad judgment call to go down this route with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely casts a shadow over the film. And a film with already a lot of issues, this is probably the worst culprit as well.
Yeah.
You know, of course, it's horrific. It's a really bad choice. But I think you've got to give it some context as well. Context in the story that's being told, context in the characters, which are absurd, and particularly this scene. I mean, how could they think that they could get away with this, considering Beeks has had first-hand contact with Ophelia and Winthorpe?
Yeah.
You've also got to give context to the time it was made as well. I'm not advocating this behaviour at all, but it's a product of its time. And I do not believe in censorship if you remove this scene and remove the film as a result, which, you know, has been called for. How are we ever going to learn from our mistakes and make no mistake about it? This is a big mistake.
Yeah.
This is the choice that you've made. Nope. You could have went down a million different routes. Westy, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, coming back 5 or 6 years ago to this was a big
I
smack
bet.
in the face.
I bet
It
it
was
was.
like, what on earth is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this? And like you guys have said, it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
It makes
No
sense
place. It has
to
no
the
place
story.
here.
Is that he's not disguising himself in any way. But I think the reason this works is because he's acting in the scene with Eddie. And if Eddie Murphy wasn't there, it would be offensive. But I think because Eddie Murphy's going along with it, it becomes funny.
Okay.
So I think Landis just goes, this is so stupid that nobody's actually going to take no offense to this. It feels like it's in the wrong film. It feels like we've missed
Well,
something.
this whole scene does, doesn't it?
The whole scene is like, we've missed something here. Is there a different film where this is trying to plug in? We just don't need these things. It's very, very easy to be a bit more subtle with it. It's very, very 1983, I guess. Is all
It's
I've
a
got to say
product
about
of
it.
its time, for certain.
As you'd expect, Landis has had his say on this over the years.
Of course.
So one thing he said, every movie is a product of its time and you have to understand it as such. The Birth of a Nation is genuinely offensive. There are scenes in it that are outrageous and unforgivable, but you don't say D.W. Griffith is not worthy of study. The guy was a genius and changed everything, but that movie is profoundly offensive. You don't cut it, it's better to see it.
I see where he's coming from.
It's
You know,
one
he's
point
got
of
a
view.
point.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
you can only do what you can do within the confines of what is acceptable at the time, right? There's so many things that are offensive,
Yeah.
but they didn't think there were.
Supporters of this scene may ask why it isn't offensive that Denham Elliott is dressed up as a priest and doing an Irish accent, perpetuating the stereotype that all priests are alcoholics or all Irish people are alcoholics or both.
Yeah.
Aykroyd said, I probably couldn't get away with it now. Eddie and I were improvising there, and he's a black man, and his entourage were all black people, and I don't think they're better than I at all. There was no objection then. Nobody said anything. It was just good comic beat that was truthful to the story.
Yeah. However, he now admits that he wouldn't choose to do the blackface thing, and he wouldn't be allowed to either, certainly not. He said, I probably wouldn't be allowed to do a Jamaican accent, whiteface or black, in these days that we're living in. All of that's out the window. I'd be hard-pressed to do an English accent and get away with it. They'd say, oh, you're not English, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Landis, he has no misgivings about the scene, and he has said he would do it again now, and he said that this kind of behaviour is indicative of someone like Winthorpe, who has lived a life of privileged ignorance.
And this was last year, 2023.
Wow.
And he used two real examples. He said, Brett Kavanaugh, one of the Supreme Court justices, do you remember the pictures of him in college in blackface? Or what about Prince Harry dressing up as a Nazi? It comes from a certain class of non-thinkers.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where he's coming from. There's not a definitive school of thought on it. I suppose like the only definitive we know is that it's not good to do blackface.
No, just don't do it. And
It's a fairly simple rule, I think.
It is, it is. As for the perceived guerrilla rape scene, Landis said, I'm interested that people are offended by it. It's so ridiculous. I mean, the fact that the gorilla would accept this guy in a rubber mask, that's a cartoon gag.
Yeah, I see where he's coming from, yeah.
Well, I like the bridge between the absurdity of the train and the trading floor. I think it brings it back on track a little bit.
Yeah.
First off, you've got that scene in the car park where Billy Ray impersonates Beaks and provides the Dukes with the bogus crop report. Almost certainly a nod to Deep Throat scenes from All the President's Men.
Definitely is.
Yeah.
It's great when they're saying their goodbyes at the train station. Louis goes in for a smooch with Ophelia and Coleman looks away to give them some privacy.
Yeah.
That great reaction that Denham Elliott is just pitch perfect in this
great.
film. Yeah.
Yeah. So subtle.
It's
so
great.
Wonderful, yeah.
But when the boys get to Manhattan, they show up in a taxi compared to the Dukes in a limo. Another nice visual cue of standing and status. And I love the prep and tough talk that Louis gives Billy Ray. It kind of reminds me of the pep talk that Merrin gives Karras in The Exorcist prior to going toe-to-toe with the devil.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
He says the
Right,
demon
yeah.
is a liar. He will lie to confuse you, but it also makes lies with the truth to attack. But here it's think big, think positive, never show any sign of weakness. Always go for the throat. Fear, that's the other guy's problem.
That's the other guy's problem. I
I
love
love
that line.
that.
Yeah, that's great.
One minute you're up $500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they've repossessed your Bentley. Love it.
That's great, right?
It
Now
is.
we're talking about, right?
It is. But this is Aykroyd's scene. This is Lewis's arena. These are his people, and he's ultra confident combing his hair. And it's Valentine that's getting a little fidgety here. And you see that all the way through the trading floor. But Winthorpe is supremely confident and unflappable.
Yeah.
And then they walk out of that bathroom with Lewis saying, let's kick some ass. Amazing. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then from there, we'll go into the trading floor. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, I haven't seen anything like this before. It's up there with like Wolf of Wall Street
Mm-hmm.
or Wall Street itself.
Yeah.
But it's my worst nightmare. This whole thing is my worst nightmare. People just have no identity. Everyone just becomes this thing that has to buy or sell, and it becomes about the commodity. And it's so chaotic. I don't understand how this works. They're just signing bits of paper and handing it. How does that fucking work? Is that a guarantee for the orange juice? Like,
I know.
but it doesn't matter. That's the whole point of this whole sequence, is that it doesn't matter. It's a classic 80s ending that people saw this and then just ran with it and just went, you know what? We're going to make the ending feel good and not make sense, because it doesn't need to make sense. I think because I'm not very intelligent when it comes to this kind of bullshit, but they sell early and then buy late. Right?
Yeah.
So they sell at a higher price and then buy it back when it's a lower price.
So I'll take this, Westy, because
If you
I've got it in a nutshell.
That would be lovely.
This is what I've gleaned from doing a lot of research on it, Westy.
Okay.
Duke and Duke have bribed a government official to get a copy of the government orange crop report, meaning they'll have knowledge of the stock before it's announced. But Winthorpe and Valentine get in before they get it and give the Dukes the opposite information.
Yes.
The crop is strong, the Dukes think it's weak, and are under the assumption that the price will rise. When Winthorpe shouts out an almost unintelligible line that causes pandemonium on the trading floor, he says, sell 30 April at 142, meaning they'll sell 30 contracts of frozen orange juice at 142 per pound.
Right.
The pandemonium comes from the fact that the traders think the prices will be much higher than 142 in the future. But then the crop report comes out. Lewis and Billy Ray bought it 29 cents per pound. It's the classic buy low, sell high. The Dukes are the opposite, and they are hundreds of millions down.
I mean, that's not my world, but it works. It totally works, because you're like, yeah, these guys have got it sorted.
And for the writing of the final scene, Harris said, I asked some people who were in that business to kind of walk me through it. And then when I was writing it, it was like studying for an exam. You kind of understand it the day of, but then 24 hours later, you can't remember how anything works.
Yeah, I totally get that. Mm-hmm. Landis said it just took him ages to work out how the finale worked. He's directing it and he didn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Weingrod and Harris said that they knew it would confuse audiences, but kind of rolled the dice, hoping that they'd be invested in the characters and wouldn't pay too much attention to it.
Right.
I think it does work, because I still don't know what it means.
No, definitely
It doesn't matter, though, does it? That's the point.
No.
And I love Winthorpe walking out here, and he's Valentine's like, now? When do we do this? He's like, not yet. Not
Lewis.
yet. Lewis. And then when it hits, it's great. It's one of them great feel-good endings.
Initially, the trading floor scene was set in Chicago. Landis said that once it was clear that the filmmakers had a good understanding of how everything worked, the Chicago Commodities Exchange just slammed the door on them. They didn't want them to know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wall Street were a little bit more forgiving. However, things did change slightly. They were supposed to film at the World Trade Center Commodities Exchange on a weekday during trade hours. But the presence of Aykroyd and Murphy distracted traders, and $6 billion of trades were halted. So they had to move location. Yeah.
Jesus
Crazy.
Christ.
And they ended up moving to the 50th floor of the World Trade Center. And Landis said there were no windows, and it was 3 to 4 stories high, and just said that was very strange to take an elevator up 50 or 60 floors and then you thought you were underground. Very disorientating. And Landis said also around 90% of the extras in that scene were actual real traders.
He said, I was quite taken aback at how physically rough it was. They really elbowed one another, like giving it 6 and out. It was like a contact sport. They were basically trading 8 or 9 hours a day. So we were in there for 3 to 4 hours on 2 days between opening and closing. I actually shot some guerrilla stuff there that I used in the movie, but that sounds awful to me.
You can tell that looks like real footage. You can tell
it's
that
awful.
it does. Yeah, it does.
And then in 2010, there was a rule introduced into the trading of commodities referred to as the Eddie Murphy rule. And that stipulated that using misappropriated government information for commodity markets trading was now illegal, because prior to this, it was a frowned upon practice, but you couldn't be prosecuted for it.
Insider trading, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
That's crazy. And then right at the end here, you've got obviously a beautifully delivered profanity from Don Amici. He took exception to the profanity here because he was deeply religious. He was from the golden age of cinema where the F word was never uttered.
Yeah.
According to Jamie Lee Curtis, this wasn't the only scene for which Amici had misgivings. After every scene with bad language, he went out of his way to apologise to cast and crew, even showing up early on set to get his apologies in before he did it.
Outrageous. He's the worst guy in the film as well.
He really is.
Yeah, but for this scene, Landis eventually got Amici to do one, and only one take. He said, I'm going to do it once, I'm not going to do it again. Where Randolph collapses and Mortimer has to be aggressively dismissive about his brother's plight. It's fucking wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad he did, because,
It's so
his
good.
delivery...
Fuck him!
Fuck him! And the guy is stunned.
It's amazing. It's so good.
Turn those machines back on! So a satisfying, if somewhat confusing ending. We know one thing for certain, though. Billy Ray and Lewis are looking good, feeling good.
Too right.
Reception and awards.
A comedy with a mixed bag cast wasn't expected to do great business in the summer of '83, but it way outperformed the majority of the competition.
Yep, it became the fourth highest grossing film of 1983, behind Return of the Jedi, understandable, Terms of Endearment, and Flashdance, which obviously was a phenomenon back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it ended up returning $90 million from a budget of $15 million, which meant it earned more than the likes of Superman 3, Sudden Impact, and Octopussy. So that's pretty impressive, really.
Some established IP there as well.
Yeah.
Very good.
Timothy Harris said that he got a call from his agent who had people approaching him asking if it was true that the idea for the film was producer Aaron Russo's, and that he and Weingrober hired hands. He found out that Jeffrey Katzenberg was going around town saying that it was his idea. He said, being a Hollywood cynic by then, I knew it was a hit because people were trying to steal credit for it already. And that's when you know you're onto something.
Yeah. You know you've got something hot on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was popular from a critical lens. High-profile but controversial film critic Rex Reed spoke fondly of the film, saying, Trading Places in an updated Frank Capra with 4-letter words, and I could think of no higher praise than that.
Yeah.
If you can't, then that's not good journalism.
It's not. Really good point.
Janet Maslin had positive things to say about Trading Places, but also said Preston Sturges might have made a movie like Trading Places if he had a little less inspiration and a lot more money. Harsh.
That is harsh.
In a retrospective review, Empire gave it 4 out of 5. It said a brilliant ensemble comedy with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd at the top of their games. Hear. And finally, the big man, Roger Ebert. Out of 4, what do you think he gave it?
3.5?
I'll go
Maybe?
2.5. I think he liked his old school stuff and
Oh.
thought this wasn't quite up to the standard.
I tell you what, split the difference. It's 3 out of 4.
3 out of
Okay,
4,
right.
okay.
He said it's a great idea for a story. A white preppy snot and a black street hustler trade places and learn new skills they never dreamed existed. The movie's invention extends all the way to the climactic scenes, which involve not the usual manic chase, but a commodity scam, a New Year's Eve party on a train, and a gay gorilla. During award season, Trading Places was recognised with a smattering of nominations, but no wins, unfortunately. One Oscar nom, Bernstein for Best Score, who lost out to Michael Legrand, and Alan and Marilyn Bergman for Yentl. The fact that War Games was nominated for its screenplay and this wasn't, I think is a crime.
That's outrageous.
Wow. Okay.
It's fucking outrageous. Yeah.
2 Golden Globe noms, Best Musical or Comedy. It lost out again to Yentl. And Murphy was nominated for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical, but lost out to Michael Caine for Educating Rita.
Okay.
I love Educating Rita.
He's great.
Yeah, he's
It's a great
good.
film.
He's good in it. Yes,
Yeah.
he is. More disappointment followed at the BAFTAs. Denham Elliott and JLC were nominated in the supporting categories. Both missed out. Elliott was clearly the hometown vote.
Oh, yeah. Clearly. Yeah.
Harris and Weingrod were nominated for their writing, but lost out to Paul D. Zimmerman for The King of Comedy. That's fair, I think.
No, that's absolutely fair.
that's fair enough.
I mean, that's on the page. It's on the screen.
Yeah.
It is. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's great. And now from a contemporary point of view, Trading Places has 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, very high, and 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, which, if my memory serves me right, is 0.2 more than Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes.
So it's still got a good reputation. So performing well on all fronts, I'm sure that Landis wasn't expecting awards, but he'll have been happy that this risky cast brought home the bacon, or pork bellies.
Yeah.
Sequels and influence.
No sequel to Trading Places, of course, but in a very nice callback, the Landis-directed Eddie Murphy vehicle, Coming to America, has a scene in which Prince Akeem gives 2 hobos a bundle of cash.
Yeah.
And those hobos turn out to be Randolph and Mortimer, who clearly put the money to good use and are referenced again in Coming to America, the sequel from a few years ago.
Right.
That aside, in the years since its release, where have you seen Trading Places' influence? What do you think its legacy is, Westy?
I think it's mainly on the people who were in the film. I think everyone rose from this, and it was Landis invested in people, I think, invested in actors, invested in their performances. Murphy couldn't have got bigger after this.
No.
Aykroyd.
Ghostbusters straight after.
Ghostbusters straight after this, and it just kept rising. I just think this was just an absolute lesson in believing in people, believing in their ability, and believing in what they can do, and they will deliver. From 83 to like 89, any of these guys were complete commodities.
I agree.
They were just absolute gold.
Lovely tie-in.
To buy into, and that's how it feels to me. It feels like Landis has planted something, and it's just spawned all of these different branches that you can get so much from this film. So for me, its influence and its legacy lies in whoever was involved in this film grew from it. So that's what I get from it.
Yeah, from just a broad point of view, it's generally considered one of the best comedies of the 80s.
Yeah.
It's a touchstone in the career of most, if not all, of the casts' respective careers, and the film that sprung Murphy to superstardom. Paramount later tied him to a $25 million 5-picture deal and financed Eddie Murphy Productions along with it. On this alone.
That's huge.
Massive.
That's too big. 25 million.
Without the success of Trading Places, you don't have a studio taking Dan Aykroyd's Ghostbusters script seriously for me. No. The implications of which would have been seismic for a number of reasons. The advancement in special effects would look different. So would Bill Murray's career. And an icon like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man would be erased from existence.
Oof.
Yeah.
Not worth thinking about.
Big really. News.
Yeah.
And as JLC has said, she wouldn't have the career she has, which means no Fish Called Wonder, no Anything Anywhere All at Once, no Oscar win.
No.
We mentioned the impact it had on Don Amici's career.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think about the legacy and influence of Trading Places?
Definitely more of a legacy film than a film with influence, I'd say.
Yes,
I can't think of much I've watched where I've got a definite Trading Places influence on that.
Mm-hmm.
The legacy is more to do with the fact that I said earlier, it just has a very different feel to most other 80s comedies. It is trying to do something different, and it has a veneer of quality you don't really get in this genre, certainly not from that decade. So I think maybe, though, its biggest legacy is just making you reassess and realize again how amazing Eddie Murphy was right from the start. So early at 22. It's still among his best films in terms of performance, and I'd say it's probably Landis' second best after American Werewolf.
Unfortunately, when you speak about legacy, you've also got to mention that the blackface scene doesn't scan right in 2024.
Yeah.
And as a result, it was one of 16 films that Sky, a TV broadcaster in the UK, added a disclaimer to the start of the film. And the disclaimer reads, "This film has outdated attitudes, language, and cultural depictions which may cause offence today."
Right, fair enough.
Unfortunate. Yeah. But on the positive side, Business Insider claimed that Trading Places is the greatest Wall Street movie ever made.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Timothy Harris said that he had people coming up to him saying that Trading Places inspired them to become a broker. Didn't inspire me to become a broker. No fucking chance. And, but she said it's a huge paradigm turn that a film written as a satire of that world ends up inspiring someone to go into the world and make a lot of money. Like, it happens left, right, and centre, though, doesn't it, really?
It does. It's like what happened with when Gordon Gekko inspired people to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like Del Boy.
Yeah. And then Wolf of Wall Street, and then same thing. Yeah.
Trading Places has become a Christmas Eve tradition in Italy on channel Italia 1. They have aired Trading Places on Christmas Eve for over 30 years, and it's regularly cited as one of the great Christmas movies overall as well.
Okay.
In 2015, the Writers Guild of America voted the screenplay the 33rd funniest screenplay ever, joint with Ferris Bueller.
Joint with Ferris Bueller.
I think it's better than that.
I think it's loads more better than Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. And finally, it was adapted for the stage in a musical version, which debuted in Atlanta in 2022. So there's life in the old dog yet.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Despite the controversy, Trading Places' impact on the industry is still big, and it still has an incredibly strong reputation in pop culture and among film fans, no doubt helped by its seasonal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All the right movies ranking.
Before we set sail for a paradise island, it's time for the renowned ATRM ranking.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, your summary and score for Trading Places, please.
Loads to really enjoy about this. Brilliant performances from everyone. There's not one performance that lets this film down. hilarious moments throughout, and you can feel Landis trying something different with this one and recognizing that he can grow up a bit and he can try to make something that carries a bit of weight to it, and for the most part it does that really successfully. But I think overall it's a nearly film for me. It's nearly a Christmas classic if you want to frame it that way, but it's not one I'd put up there with the likes of Die Hard, for example. You know, if it's on, I'll watch it, but could live without watching it every Christmas. And the reason for that is it's nearly a brilliantly directed film. It's nearly a brilliantly written film, but for the reasons I outlined in the writing, it just pulls its punches a bit. I think it knows what it wants to say. I don't think it knows how to say it, and some of the messaging just gets confused along the way. And then you do get to that final 20 minutes and it just collapses a bit. It's silly, it's confusing, it's offensive, it's contradictory, because always saying greed is bad, but no, actually it's good as long as you're the right person to get it. I don't know what I don't know what it wants me to think at the end, apart from it's good to see Aykroyd and Murphy happy, which fair enough.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because most of the pieces a film needs to be a masterpiece are here, but it's just not all of them. So for that era, it's a surprisingly classy comedy, but it's not as sharp as it should be, and it doesn't quite have the teeth I think it could have. So it's a solid 8 out of 10 from me.
8 out of 10, yeah, that's a solid score for certain. What about you, Westy?
I mean, if I could have summed it up before Matt, I would probably have said exactly the same things, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I came to this one really late, and it was an eye-opener and a jaw-dropper at times.
Of course.
I mean, I knew Landis's career, and I knew everything, came from this and before this, and how important this was to him, how important it is to everybody who's involved in this film. But like Matt said, he's missed a trick. It just feels like there's just a home run here that hasn't been hit.
Yeah.
There's just something that's
He's
just
got to third
missing.
base.
Yeah, he's there, but I wanted to finish on a high, and I didn't feel like incredibly moved by it by the end of it. I didn't feel like anyone had got any further forward. I didn't feel like anyone understood any of the other characters. It was just, let's go to the Virgin Islands and let's get a boat. All right, great.
Crazy.
So nothing's changed really from the start of the film, as opposed to everyone's just in a better place because of money. It's great because it wants to say something and it pulls you through that, and I love it for that. But I'm the same as Matt. I'm going to have to give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, okay, well, again, solid scores.
Yeah.
And, we've looked in the dark corners of Trading Places. We've found a few things that we don't like.
Yeah.
We've found a few things that haven't aged well at all. But this is a rarity in the genre, a comedy with something to say, a lot on its mind.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot here. But like Matt said, he said it beautifully. It's like, it doesn't know how to say it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's muddled for certain.
Yeah.
But the relevance of the message in the film and the narrative themes, that hasn't diminished with time. Some of the narrative beats don't hold up to scrutiny, but the comedy, I think, grabs a hold of you from the start, and I think that sticks the landing.
Mm-hmm.
The least said about the train sequence, the better, and everything that comes
Absolutely.
with that.
Yes, agree with that.
But the cast are outstanding, and it's very important in the careers of at least 4 of the cast members. Mm-hmm. Without this, Curtis, Murphy, Aykroyd, Amici's respective careers would have looked dramatically different.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more to Trading Places than meets the eye, and it has been overshadowed for me. It is a top-tier 80s comedy. Issues notwithstanding, I'm giving Trading Places 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yep.
I saw that coming. That's fair enough.
Yeah, of course. And I would say it's got a 9.5 of that is nostalgia.
Yeah. That's always fair enough.
Yeah. Our fourth and final score come from our followers on X. Trading Places is, as discussed, a hot potato at this time of year, and that was certainly evident in the comments. Anthony at Anti1 Kenobi said 7 out of 10 movie, 8 out of 10 comedy, 9 out of 10 Christmas film, 10 out of 10 Jamie Lee Curtis.
Very nice.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Ian Cusick at Ian Cusick said, one of my Christmas favourites, the image of Dan Aykroyd eating salmon through his matted beard always makes me gag.
Disgusting.
As it does us, Ian.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy being real Eddie Murphy when he was funny. Fantastic Denham Elliott performance. JLC looked amazing to a teenage viewer. Still does. 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah. I can back that up. Yeah.
And finally, Stuck in Middle U said a comedy that hits mostly the right notes with a sublime performance from Eddie Murphy and wonderful turns by Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy. The romance between Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee is a bit stilted, but doesn't bog down the enjoyment of the film overall.
That's fair enough.
And I've left out a few comments because a lot of them were concerning Jamie Lee and her assets. shall we say.
Right.
Yeah. People have no shame in saying what's on their mind on X. It's absolutely outrageous. Really keep it to yourself, everyone. Come on. A little bit of class at Christmas.
Say what they want.
So considering all of that, what do you think Trading Places scored out of 10 on X, chaps?
9.
8.5.
Westy, out of the park. That's a home run.
Boom.
Very solid. Very surprising. 9 out of 10. There were a lot of positive comments on X about this film. Very little on the negative side.
Okay.
Yes.
Very little.
If this gets you at the right time, it really gets you. It's got a lot to say and you can get lots from it.
It's great.
Yeah.
Which means with all 4 combined, Trading Places scores 34 out of 40. A fair score, I think. Considering the issues that the film has. To be 6 off full marks is pretty remarkable, really.
Considering.
Join us again on All the Right Movies. In 2 weeks, we are taking a Christmas break, so you'll get to listen to an episode of our Patreon double feature show, which will only be available for a limited time. Then we're kicking the new year off with a bang by delving into Denis Villeneuve's outstanding sci-fi Arrival. John, Matt and Westy will be bringing you that story, a relatively new film, which is a nice change of pace for us here.
Great film. Love Villeneuve. Yeah.
Outside of our classic show, we have a lot going on. There are regular episodes of Showreel coming out every 2 weeks, alternate to this show. There's the Patreon exclusive podcast double feature, the latest episode of which is live next week. And as a Christmas bonus, it's 3 films on the show, not 2. Outrageously, we're talking about Jason Statham in Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch and Crank. Bound to be a lively discussion to be had there.
Very much so, yeah.
Save it for the episode, Westy. I love it.
Yep. I'm keeping it really reserved.
Yeah. There'll be brand new episodes of our movie review show, The Watch List, available for our Patreon supporters in the middle of January. So for everything we've said at the top, all of our podcasts, double feature, The Watch List, it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or for the full experience, patreon.com/alltherightmovies.
Always go for the full experience.
Always. If we entertain you on the show, you had a good time, please consider giving us a review, a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or any streaming platform you use. We'd be very grateful if you could.
Absolutely. Definitely.
It only takes a couple of seconds just to click that 5-star review.
Why not?
In between all of our podcasts, we're active on social media daily. On X, we are at AT Right Movies. Loads of incredible behind-the-scenes images and clips and interviews. And as you come to expect, our outstanding making of movie threads, just like our podcast, all our behind-the-scenes tales come from cast and crew or is verified by at least 3 sources. So please check them out. You will be glad that you did because they are exhaustive and fantastic.
Definitely.
Indeed.
We've done our research just
We
so you
certainly
guys
have.
can, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves.
Please, allow us.
Yes, allow me.
On Instagram and Threads, we are at all_right movies. Our making of movie threads also going up on Threads, so check them out if you're on there. On TikTok, search at All the Right Movies. We have a Facebook group, which you are more than welcome to join for some great movie chat. We're on Blue Sky as well, all over the place. On Blue Sky, we're at alltherightmovies.com. Our threads are going up on there as well. We are on YouTube. Watch our videos if you want to see the 4 of us in action. Subscribe, like, and comment on those videos as well. That'd be great. youtube.com/alltherightmovies.
Yeah.
And our website is alltherightmovies.com.
Yes, it is.
Yep,
That's
that
it.
is a wrap, everyone. We're going to go to a tropical island. Lobster and crack crab for everyone.
Oh,
It is Christmas after all.
that sounds good.
Feeling good, Luke.
Looking good, Westy. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you so much for listening throughout the year. We love your support. Much more to come from ATRM in the new year. All the very best.
Yes, thank you so much for listening, guys. It's massively appreciated, and a Merry Christmas to everyone.
Season's greetings.
Merry New Year!
In this country, we say Happy New Year.